This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, folks? Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Victory Wednesday here on WST. Another big win for the Winnipeg Jets last night, beating the Calgary Flames in regulation at home. We'll dive into that. We'll chop it up with Scott Billeck, as well as Mike McIntyre on today's program. And listen, we're not going to be forgetting about the World Juniors. We're going to get to that as well coming up a little bit later on in the program. But yeah, big win last night. And of course, fun night tonight for Winnipeg Jet fans as the skills competition goes down at Canada Life Centre. We'll dive into that and maybe get a few predictions from you all in the chat, joining us live on YouTube. What's up, everyone? And Remo and I will get our thoughts as well on who might be the big winners at the skills competition. But, of course, the focus right out of the gate will be on the game last night. But before we do that, a big thanks to the sponsors that make our show happen each and every day for you, including Princess Auto, Coolbet Canada, Little Brown Jug, Canadian Club, Culligan Water, Vita Health Fresh Market, Wallace & Wallace, Consolidated Supply, F Apparel, Manitoba Battery, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, and our friends at Not AutoCorp. Michael Remis, what's going on?
I'm in a good mood. Always in a good mood after a win, Hustler. And Mike McIntyre tweeted this last week. Remember last week when the Jets lost 3 in a row? They had so many injuries. They had all these tough games against Edmonton, who had just demolished Seattle. Calgary, who's playing a lot better now. Vancouver sucks, but they had, Vancouver was on a bit of a heater going into that game. And here are the Jets not using injuries as an excuse, winning 3 in a row. And Hustler, this is the 4th 3-game win streak of the season. I remember when they couldn't even get one. When it was I remember it was 3-game in a row win streak watch that one season. What we're watching this year has been fantastic. It's been remarkable. Josh Morrissey doing Norrisy things yesterday with that. That goal was the highlight. Although I did enjoy the one off Brandon Dillon's ass for his first of the year.
Big butt. What a game,
according to Brandon Dillon. His butt. What a game though. Last night. So we're all in a good mood here today.
Yeah, it was a fun night at the rink last night. I gotta say. That was a big game for the Winnipeg Jets to continue to build on what they'd done coming out of that 3-game losing streak, as you mentioned. I mean, win at home last Thursday against Vancouver was massive considering the way things went against the division rival Wild on the 27th. And then to go in and grab 2 points in Edmonton was just a hell of a way to finish off 2022. And they continued to do things they've done all season long last night against the Calgary Flames. Now, this is a very even game. We've talked before about that razor-thin margin often between winning and losing. But a number of players stepped up big time last night, including Connor Hellebuyck, who continues to play at just an absolutely incredible level. And you mentioned Josh Morrissey. That goal last night, Reem, the give and go between Josh Morrissey and Kyle Connor certainly will end up on some of the season highlight lists. But the fact of the matter was the Calgary Flames came back, tied it up, and the Winnipeg Jets did not falter whatsoever. And it was Ville Heinola getting into the mix with the blast deflected by one Sam Gagner, who got to sing Mr. Brightside on the bench, much to the delight of everyone in the crowd. And the Jets held on. And I'll tell you what, grinding out and drawing that penalty in the final 3 minutes was huge as well, considering the push that you knew was going to be coming from the Calgary Flames in the dying minutes. Overall, though, more of what we've seen. Rick Bowness said to the team afterwards that great teams find ways to win, and the Winnipeg Jets have been doing that after that 3-game losing streak that had some people a little nervous approaching the new year.
Yeah, they got some help in the schedule last night. Dallas losing to LA, so they are a couple points back. And yeah, they got a couple days off here. Friday, tough match against Tampa, who's in Minnesota tonight. And we'll have to wait and see what the lineup looks like Friday, because sounds like some guys are going to be coming back. If it's Schmidt, Perfetti, or Ehlers, or all, we'll be tuning in to the morning skate, the Twitter, seeing what everyone is tweeting out tomorrow and Friday morning. But you got to feel good. And yeah, that was quite a goaltending duel. Markstrom making some big saves. Hellebuck save of the night on Mackenzie Weegar. But Hellebuck, I mean, this guy he's in Vesna mode, and he's had a game here or there where he wasn't at his best, but that he's going to bounce back, and the consistency from him has been propelling the team to the top of the standings, as well as a great play from everyone, including everyone who's come up. And one guy we were talking about off air before the start of the show was Kevin Stenlund. I mean, these guys out of nowhere, the Stenlund line, their analytics in terms of shot attempts, it was Stenny and AJF. Actually, he had 4 shots, AJF, yesterday. But him and Barron, I mean, they were awesome yesterday in terms of suppressing shots and taking shots on net. So, I mean, these guys have stepped up and played so well when so many players are injured. They got some tough decisions coming up, that's for sure.
Well, and you know what? That was one of the topics that we sort of hit going into last night's game on yesterday's show. The fact of the matter was everyone was going to stay in the lineup for one more game. But Ehlers is coming back, Perfetti's coming back, Blake Wheeler's coming back, and that is going to bump some guys that have played well out of the lineup. And I thought last night in a lot of ways was a real opportunity for guys on that bubble, if you will, that had been called up, that had come over on waivers, and Carson Kuhlman's example, a recent recall in Christian Reichel, all getting an opportunity to show that they deserve to stay in the line and in the lineup. And I'll go back to a couple weeks ago, speaking with Murat Atesh, not too long after Kevin Stenlund was recalled and had a great start to his time here. And throughout the fact that with what he's doing in the faceoff circle, with the fact that he was put at center and David Gustafsson got moved out to the wing, and the work that he's done in the taking and winning draws, which has been so important to Rick Bowness, that Kevin Stenlund, I think, a couple of weeks ago was putting himself in a situation where he was going to be considered to maybe stick around a little longer when guys got healthy. Tell you what, Remis, I feel even stronger about that today than I did a couple weeks ago. I mean, he has continued to take a bigger role, to earn more responsibility from the coaching staff, and he played one hell of a game last night, along with 2 guys in Morgan Barron and Axel Jonsson-Fjallby that certainly want to make sure that they're staying in the lineup as well. And that level of competition within the bottom 6, which is something that I think was a real weakness of the Winnipeg Jets last year, has ended up being a huge part of the reason we're talking about a team 11 games above 500 right now and comfortably in a playoff spot in the Central Division and Western Conference.
Yeah, I was just looking at those shot attempts numbers has from the AJF Stenlund Barron line, 8-4, 3 against. I think Stanny alone had 10 attempts. Jonsson-Fjallby led the team in shots on goal with 4. These guys are playing well, and to use the ice hockey terms, you got 2 big guys and Barron and Stanny, and you got a skinny guy, and he's a burner, and Jonsson-Fjallby, and maybe he might be our pick for fastest skater tonight, although that hair might give some additional drag. But
tie it down, Axel.
Yeah, you talk about guys who stepped up. Kuhlman, he can't really finish, but he's looked pretty good there with Lowry and Scheifele. And you mentioned faceoffs. How about Adam Lowry lately in the faceoff circle, Huss? Last night, 6 of 8, 75%. But he's on a heater here. In his last 4 games, he's 20 of 27, 74%. Special teams hustler. Last night wasn't, the Jets PK. They went 2 for 2 on the penalty kill. You'd like to see them score on the power play 0 for 4, but again, you won the game, and I think you're kind of just win. You're in win at all costs mode. It may not have looked the prettiest at times against Edmonton, and even last night against Calgary didn't look pretty, but you're in a period of the schedule where we've talked about the games played, lack practice, players out of the lineup. you just got 6 of 6 points in your last 3 games, and you've got a former 2-time Cup champion coming in here Friday, and they're going to be. Well, I think they won. They won yesterday against Chicago. They're on the central stretch here.
Everyone wins against Chicago.
Yeah, of course. Well, we looked yesterday. They had the best odds at getting Connor Bedard, but I think that'll be a big tilt on Friday here at Canada Life.
You know what? Jets now 14-6 on home ice. Good for 28 points, which is 4th most in the National Hockey League. And I'll just quickly mention the crowd last night. I mean, I think we all saw the way the crowds were at the beginning of the season, and we knew that there were some organizational challenges, and there were some seats that weren't season tickets anymore that they were going to have to work to sell. I think they've done a great job with that Tuesday promo with the cheaper ticket and a beer to sort of get some, fill out that spot. I was really wondering about the crowd last night, though. I mean, you had the great crowds in between Christmas and New Year's. Early January is traditionally a time where a lot of people sort of hunker down. But I'll tell you what, I mean, there was not a lot of big pockets of empty seats last night, and the upper deck where I was in was pretty much full right to the top. And, it took a little while for the fans, I think, to get into that game because of the way things were played and the tightness of the game in the first period. But, man, that was a fun building to be in as the game to continue to go on. And tell you what, that roar when Sam Gagner was able to deflect the Ville Heinola shot in the third period to regain the lead. I don't want to say it almost blew the roof off the place, but it got loud in there. And then the crowd was really, really engaged, through the white knuckle ride to the final buzzer. But the level of confidence I think that fans and players have in a team like the Winnipeg Jets, despite the Carolina game earlier in the Dallas game, I mean, where things had gone a little hairy when the opposition has had the empty net pulled. The way Connor Hellebuck's playing right now, it's hard not to have confidence in that last line of defense. And you mentioned that save on Mackenzie Weegar earlier in the game last night, Remo. I mean, that was an absolute showstopper. But to your point, Jacob Markstrom had a couple, including an absolute robbery on Mark Scheifele in the game as well. So we got to see some good goaltending, and we got to see a team in the Winnipeg Jets that stuck to their plan, continued to work throughout that third period, really bringing it to the Calgary Flames, and deservedly got a big 2 points on home ice.
Yeah, Mike McIntyre tweeting out the attendance yesterday. Wasn't a third straight sellout, but for Tuesday night, 14,130. And I think people are starting to see, hey, going to games, you're going to see an entertaining product. You're going to see a winning product, as you mentioned, at home, Hustler. What's their record? Would you say 14-6?
Yeah.
I have it here, something like that. Anyway, yeah, 14-6. That's right. 4th most points in the NHL at home. Meanwhile, a team like Vancouver, who's coming in here Sunday, their home record is abysmal, and they get blown out at home every night. A lot of other problems there. So, I think you like to see the crowds, the goal songs. Definitely. I think when a guy scores like Gagner, who scored some big ones at home and has got a song like Mr. Brightside that you can sing along to, I think it's great and creates a great atmosphere. So I'm looking forward to more of that as we get into more, as you said, white knuckle ride, more intense games down the stretch. As you're kind of going for a division title here. You got to get that banner that was lost in 2019.
Well, speaking of goal songs, and speaking of goals, and the D are coming. The D have been coming. I believe that's 20 goals on the season now from the Winnipeg Jet defense, right around the pace that Rick Bowness asked for at the beginning of the season. But I was joking with some friends last night. I don't know what sort of a prop number we could have got on a Brendan Dillon deflection goal from Dylan DeMello. But it happened last night, Remo, and we got to hear another new goal song. This Is Why I'm Hot for Brendan Dillon. I laughed out loud when they started playing that one last night. And, I know he had said it was his big butt that tipped it in. Maybe they could have pivoted to Sir Mix-a-Lot last night. But the bottom line was the big guy had the big keister in front of the net and got a nice little bounce and got on the board. And, the defense, I mean, we've spent so much time talking about Josh Morrissey this season for obvious reasons. But Dylan DeMello has stepped up his game. He's getting a little more aggressive when it comes to getting those pucks on net. And nice to see the big guy, Brendan Dillon, that does so many of those other things that often don't show up on the score sheet, to actually get on it.
Yeah, Dylan DeMello, I mean, in half the games, he's almost past his point total. He's got 10 and 34. Last year, he had 13 and 76. That was Brendan Dillon's first goal of the season. I mean, I think last year, you never saw Brendan Dillon go up into the zone and Mark Scheifele cover back for him, and Dillon being in the right spot, having a puck bounce off him and in. How many times this year has Dylan DeMello been up in the play for a guy who hadn't scored in a long time? Until earlier, I mean, he's had breakaways. His goal, he was in the crease, right in front of the net. This is like a guy who's known as a defensive defenseman. So when Bones said, the D are coming at the beginning of the season, we kind of all laughed and we're like, okay, it's a funny phrase, but he's been true to his word and led by Josh Morrissey, who's second among defensemen in points and continuing his fantastic season. And you watch him. And with the puck, the move that he makes to cut to the middle on that goal, his skating has been fantastic this year. So, we always were like, the Jets don't have, a 1A D since Buffalo. Well, Josh Morrissey has stepped up and filled that hole this year.
Oh, they've got that guy right now. Make no mistake about it. He wears number 44, and he's been an absolute revelation this season, even here in Winnipeg, but definitely outside the city and around the National Hockey League. Doug Phil in chat. Jets should park Dillon in front of the net on PP2. Be honest, I'd never thought about that, but if you want to get the closest thing to an eclipse that the Winnipeg Jets can throw out there, he would be right on that. Power play, as you mentioned, didn't officially get rewarded, but I liked the way they looked at times. There was great puck control in the Calgary end. And what was interesting, Remis, was that we saw at times, both Neil Pionk and Josh Morrissey on PP1, and at times, Ville Heinola and Kyle Capobianco on PP2 last night, and a little bit of, I guess, a competition as well between those two players. Listen, Capobianco hardly played. I think he had 4 minutes last night. Another really strong game for Ville Heinola. And, there's all sorts of things that I think Ville is measured by when it comes to the coaching staff. There's some things that they want to make sure that he can do defense-wise at the NHL level, but the more he plays and the more confidence he gets, the more they're not defending and playing in the opposition's end. And that is a big, big part of what Ville Heinola brings to the table. But I don't know about you. I was really impressed with the things that Ville Heinola does well. His passing, the ability to quickly get the puck out of their own end and move it the other way, and showed some nice vision, and now he's starting to get that confidence where he will pull the trigger, which he certainly hasn't been shy about doing back in the American Hockey League and even at times earlier on this year. But I'll tell you what, the timing of that play, Sandberg to Ville to Mr. Brightside and in, it was a heck of a winning goal last night. And, not guys that maybe at the top of your list of the guys that be contributing on that winning goal, but it was an all hands on deck performance last night for the Winnipeg Jets, and I thought it was quite appropriate that those three guys were all involved on the winner.
Yeah, and Sam Guyne, he's had some big goals at home this year, and someone commented, I think it was last week, that he only scores in the team's wins, and I think it was only one loss as of last week that he had scored in. So when you're getting goals from a guy like Sam Gagner, he's played up in the lineup, but he's also been a depth forward. He's got one loss, and how many wins? Team is 6-1 when Sam Gagner scores, and for a guy who's min salary,
has he only scored at home? Like, I'll be honest, for a guy with 7 goals, it seems like we've heard Mr. Brightside a lot at Canada Life Center.
2 goals on the road. So,
okay, so 5 at home, and what a moment that was. I'm not sure where they showed it on television last night, but if you're in the building, after the winning goal, they go to show Sam Gagner sitting on the bench, and he's singing along to the song.
Yes, it showed on TV. Him and Dubois actually had a nice moment. And Dubois had a really nice, Dubois has been absolutely on fire here too. And they got to find a way to sign this guy because the calendar has turned, Hustler, and I believe he's eligible now. But Dubois is having this career season. I was looking at some stats. He was like top 20 in the league in points per 60 minutes. And he had the assist. He's got a 4-game point streak and 11 points in his last 9. Just seems like everything's clicking, and we've talked about this for a while. Everyone's having a career, but huge contribution from Dubois. And this is what they imagined when they traded for him. Because remember when he first came from the trade, and you're like, this is what they traded for Laine, but he's playing, he's pissing guys off on the other team. He's using his big body down low. He's got hands. He can move. I mean, he's a fantastic player, Dubois. I think he's got a lot of fans here, even after everything we went through with him in the summer.
Oh, listen, I don't want to get too much into that conversation, but it's funny you mentioned that signing. I mean, that is absolutely a priority. We can only hope maybe there's some things that are happening behind the scenes. And as I've been saying all year, who knows what's going on between his ears or what his thoughts are in his long-term future. But I can't help but think that the fact that this team is playing the way they are this year, the success that they've had as a team, the success he's having playing alongside Kyle Connor, all of those things can do nothing but increase the Jets' chances to where, I'm not sure. But he was an absolute problem for the Calgary Flames last night. I mean, going at it with Mackenzie Weegar and a number of players last night. And one of the things, and I commented on this, and it probably, from my vantage point in 316, I had a perfect view of it, and I don't think as many people up in the press box probably did, but the puck skills that Dubois utilized to maintain puck possession in this Calgary zone before getting it up to Josh Morrissey and then over to Kyle Connor, back to Morrissey for that goal was just another example of the five-tool player, if you will, that Pierre-Luc Dubois is. Spent some time in the penalty box, spent a lot of time in and around in front of the net, and he has just become an indispensable player for the Winnipeg Jets. And it's wild. You've got three players right now for the Winnipeg Jets that are on well above a point-a-game pace. Pierre-Luc Dubois, Josh Morrissey, and Kyle Connor. And that doesn't include Mark Scheifele, who, if you can believe this, has 23 goals on the season, but still only 9 assists. And you got to think that sooner or later, Scheifele's going to get into that group as well and, exceed points per games played right now. And Blake Wheeler's only 3 points off as well, despite the fact that he's been going on. So everyone's been contributing, but man, have the top players of the Winnipeg Jets, and we'll include Kyle Connor, really led the way. And now, as we'll get into with Scott in a minute, the competition to stay in the lineup is something that I don't think a lot of people could have imagined at the start of this year, considering what the collective thought was about the lack of depth within the organization, especially up top.
Yeah, they brought in all these guys, and in the offseason, they realized that, hey, our bottom six last year wasn't getting it done. Toninato, but he's been out of the lineup. Harkins now sent to the Moose today after clearing waivers, and Jakob Vrana actually did clear waivers to start the show. But you have AJF comes in, he's making an impact. Gustafsson, Isimon, Stenny, so many guys. So, the guys at the top getting it done, bottom contributing. Oh yeah, Saku, forgot about him. He's coming back too. I don't even know if he's going to get in. One thing I should mention, I was watching ESPN last night, Hustler. The All-Star rosters are going to be revealed Thursday, I think, during Capitals game. I didn't even know this. I didn't even know if they had vote. Did they have voting? I thought I was looking forward to voting, but I don't know if that was a thing. But how many All-Stars are the Jets going to get? Is it Hellbuck and Morrissey, or does Connor squeak in too? Because it sucks with the 3-on-3 and one per team. You're pretty limited.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, there's probably 4 guys that deserve to be there without a doubt.
Yes.
I mean, the guys that we just mentioned and Mark Scheifele. But I guess we'll see about that. By the way, special WST welcome and Happy New Year to the one and only Ezra Ginsburg, who has popped in. Shout out to Ezzy and the IC boys. Hey, just before we bring in Reem, before we bring in Scotty Reem, skills competition is tonight. You sort of mentioned this yesterday. We'll maybe do some predictions at the end or kick it around with Mike. But our buddy Jesse Pollock's going to be there. And I can confirm, for those of you that were fans of the Speed of Light promo, like I was, that we have not seen this year, and everyone wondering, where is Jet? Well, Jet's going to be back tonight, and Jet and Jesse Pollock will be going head-to-head in a Speed of Light style fastest skater contest.
Yeah, the skills competition tonight, they got fastest skater, accuracy shooting, hardest shot, team puck relay, and the breakaway challenge. And if you haven't been to a skills competition, I think it's great. They do remove the glass. I like how each player takes their own. There's so much like merch. They have their own merch, like, and they're handing it out, signing autographs. I think it's a fun night. Too bad it's at the same time as this Canada-USA game we're going to be tuned into. But I am looking forward to seeing who gets the trophy. They do have a trophy for this, so we haven't had the skills competition for a couple of years, and I do think it'll be great. I'm looking forward to seeing who. I mean, it gave us some great moments, Huss. We wouldn't be calling Ben Sherratt Mr. 107 if we didn't have the skills competition. So I don't know if anyone's going to beat that, but I am curious to find out.
Yeah, well, folks, for everyone that's with us on YouTube, make sure you hit that thumbs up button for us. And if you haven't already, hit that red subscribe button. Tell a friend about WST. That's, again, your New Year's resolution. Tell someone and get them in the crew. But we will have time later on to do our Why Not question of the day with some thoughts on who will be the Jets' fastest skater, hardest shot, and winner of the accuracy relay. Hey, I got to give a big thanks to the gang over at Consolidated Supply. They're great. Oh, excuse me. Still not over this cold, folks. We got to give a shout out to Winnipeg Walter, who won the Tournament of Champions, working on those season tickets for the Bombers, courtesy of Consolidated Supply. But as you get ready to look ahead to next year, landscaping, maybe an outdoor kitchen, golf cart, irrigation, they have got it all for you right now over at Consolidated Supply. And our friends over at Vita Health Fresh Market, of course, have great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries. And when you shop at Vita Health, you're supporting a great local company, family-owned and operated since 1936, carrying Winnipeg's largest assortment of local products, too. If you're battling colds and a sore throat, hello. It's never been easier with Cold Flex Oregano Spray, made locally by Initech Nutrition. Cold Flex Oregano Spray helps relieve coughs and sore throats and to help maintain immune function. Get yours today at any Vita Health location. And hey, if you're celebrating Sober January or Veganuary, you'll find a fantastic selection of non-alcoholic beverages and vegan and plant-based options. Vita Health Fresh Market, empowering people to lead healthy lives. 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge, and online at myvita.ca. And don't forget, folks, we're still taking submissions for our Unsung Hero program with Wallace and Wallace and Josh and Margot Morrissey. Let us know about that community hero, whether it's at your community center, involved in local sports programs, doing great charity work. Tell us about them. Unsung Hero at winnipegsportstalk.com. We'll be announcing our December winner coming up a little later on this week. And we'll have an autographed Josh Morrissey jersey for that winner. And whoever nominated our Unsung Hero will get a $500 donation in their name to the Dream Factory from Wallace & Wallace, and that is going to be matched by Margot and Josh Morrissey. Looking forward to having Josh on the show, hopefully relatively soon, to talk about it, the Dream Factory, and all that he's doing in the community. But send us those in, Unsung Hero at winnipegsportstalk.com. All right, let's get to it. Scotty Billeck joins us to tee things off. Scott, what's up? How are you?
It's going, man. It's going. I'm here. Got my booster shot today, so I'm just waiting for the impending side effects. So should be good.
Oh man,
it sounds like you're dealing with it too, right?
Yeah, you know what, man? It's one of those things that comes and goes, and every now and then in the middle of the show, I'll just get overwhelmed with a coughing fit. Remis is doing a great job, though, of holding it down and, switching the camera every now and then. And
he's got the cough button.
Sort of getting through it. Well, listen, let me just tee you up. What'd you think of last night's big win over the Calgary Flames? 3 in a row right now, and really running the table through that Pacific in the Canadian side of things with wins over Vancouver, Edmonton, and now Calgary to start off 2023.
Yeah, I mean, I think it followed a lot. I mean, it didn't follow the same lines as obviously the New Year's Eve game because the Jets weren't very good in that game. But the Jets, kept to their structure in that game. And I think that's, again, one of the hallmarks of this team. We use this word a lot, hallmarks, their success, all that stuff. I find that when this team sticks with this structure, they stick with their game plan, they're really good in these one-goal games. They're really good in, eking out victories and that sort of thing. And I like the way that they played. I like the way that, I like the way that some individuals played. I like the way Ville Heinola played. I like the way that he sealed off Nazem Kadri on the boards there, and turned that play completely around, and then ends up assisting on the game winning goal there. You mentioned it before I came on about Pierre-Luc Dubois. He was a menace all over the ice last night. People complain that he took some penalties, but I thought he got under the skin of Zadorov. Obviously, Mackenzie Weegar behind the net there. He was doing more wrestling than actually playing hockey last night. But also on the Morrissey goal, down low, just kind of moving around with the puck there, dishing it off to Josh, and then obviously Josh and Kyle did what they did there. But I liked the game. Like, I liked the way that the Jets came out. I thought they had one of their better starts in the last little while in that game, and set a bit of a tone there. And then you could see, that team, they go up 1-0, it's 1-1. They go up 2-1, it's 2-2. But it's just calm, and I think that's it's one of the interesting things with this Jets team is how calm they can be when they're just in a tight game, I suppose. And I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed watching this team, watching it kind of grow from the start of the season, because you really get a sense of how coaching has kind of affected this team. Get a sense of how kind of Rick Bowness used the word difference makers yesterday. How the difference makers on this team have really stepped up, and you saw that again last night. With that Morrissey goal to put them ahead 2-1. But and then the depth guys. You see the depth of this organization, and you mentioned it earlier, but it's true. I mean, I don't think we went into the season really knowing how deep this team was, or even doubted that this team had a lot of depth. And then you just look at it, it's been guy after guy. I think you going into the season, you would have thought Jansen Harkins was probably pretty high on the pecking order, I suppose. But now it's Jansen Harkins is the first guy to get cut, I guess, on a team that has a lot of guys that have been called up and placed into situations they wouldn't normally play. And so I think that's one of the things that's really been fascinating to watch, is that when you actually give the young guys on this team some added minutes or some different roles, you actually have this team actually has some good players. I mean, I think we always used to, there was the joke's still around, draft and destroy and all that kind of stuff, but I don't think that's been the case this year. I think a lot of these young guys have really been put in good positions to succeed. And the cream rises to the top, right? The old Macho Man Randy Savage promo there, right? But I think that's what's come to fruition with the Jets. They've allowed these guys to they've given the opportunity and allowed these guys to kind of take it and run with it. And some guys have really stepped up on this team. Carved themselves out these niche roles, and have really contributed to the success of this team, especially given how injury riddled they've been, to date so far.
No doubt about it. Well, I mean, to me, it starts in the blue paint, and Connor Hellebuyck continues to be brilliant. I mean, the performance that he had holding it down to finish out 2022, was, I think, in a lot of ways indicative of just how good he's been over this entire season. And he came right back at it. In fact, I mean, early on through the first 30 minutes of that hockey game, it was a hell of a goaltending duel. I mean, Hellebuyck made a couple monster saves, and that big one on Weegar, I think, really stood out. But Markstrom was no slouch either. And, both goaltenders were making the teams earn it. And the Winnipeg Jets did exactly that. And just back to Dubois for a minute. These are the sort of games against a big ornery team like the Calgary Flames that I think Dubois' value gets magnified even more. Because let's face it, the Jets don't have a lot of guys that'll stand nose to nose and go at it with teams and players like populate that Calgary Flames roster.
Yeah.
And even though at times we're seeing Dubois spend a couple minutes here or 4 minutes there in the box, that is something that I think was lacking in the past for the Winnipeg Jets, and I think is very important, not only for a team like Calgary, But if they want to get one up on the Minnesota Wild, they're going to need to be more like that. And you can make that same argument for a few other teams in the Central Division. And Dubois' importance to the team seems to grow almost on a game-by-game basis, which is going to give us plenty to talk about in the second half of the season and into the offseason on his future. But right now, as big of a Patrick Laine fan as that I am, and I will still eventually judge this trade on what comes out of this asset if Dubois is not here, it's hard to imagine, even for the people that were bent, of myself included, about that trade happening and the way that it all went down, that it is not right now showing the best case scenario for the Winnipeg Jets from what they thought they were getting when they traded an incredibly important asset along with Jack Roslovic to the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah, I mean, as it stands right now, take away all the context and everything, the Jets got the better player, right? And it's showing. And you're right. I mean, you called him a 5-tool player, just before I came on, and I 100% agree with you. Here's a guy that can do it all, and I think he's a special teams stud on the power play. He gets under guys' skin. He's physical. He is fearless. Obviously has all the offensive instincts in the world to go along with that. This is a guy that you would build a team around, right? I mean, this is, I think it's. I mean, it goes without saying, but it's paramount that the Jets find a way to get this guy, whether it's 3, 5, 7, whatever you can. I mean, if you're going to try and keep your window open here, I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois seems to be, to me, that he needs to be a part of it. I mean, he's just, he's such a force. They've called him a bull. I think a horse is the other name, but that's what he is. And he brings so much to this team that you would usually find in maybe 1 or 2 guys, right? Or like 2 or 3 guys maybe. But he has it all in kind of one package. And, I get it. People don't like the penalties, and maybe that cross-checking call was a little stupid. But at the same time, I mean, you got to kind of take it part of that with it, right? I mean, there's going to be nights where he takes those, but at the same time, you take Mackenzie Weegar off the ice, and don't get me wrong. I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois is really good on the power play. But I think when you take Mackenzie Weegar off the ice, I mean, that's a big threat from that team. He was in Zadorov even before they were, they were going at each other in the first period. I mean, Dubois was letting Zadorov know that he was on the ice. Zadorov's not a small guy either, right? But I mean, he reminds me of Dustin Byfuglien in that way. And I think, a lot of fans were pretty forgiving of Pierre-Luc Dubois, all the summer stuff and all that stuff, because I think he reminds them of Dustin Byfuglien. I think that's the best, in my opinion, the best kind of. He doesn't have the same kind of hitting ability. Or at least he doesn't use that kind of ability. But the way that he drags teams into it, the way that he can make one player even just get the building involved, right? I mean, I think you saw that last night with some of these wrestling matches. You were at the game. People were enjoying those. I mean, I think it gets the crowd into it. It gets the team into it. Not that they needed it last night, but there's been other games where Pierre-Luc Dubois has been the guy on the ice that that Energizer bunny, and he just keeps going. And yeah, I mean, I agree. I think he's really kind of turning into that all around center iceman in the NHL that teams covet. And he's doing it at, what is he, 23, 24 now? I mean, this is a kid still, with plenty of room to still grow his game. And the way he talks about growing his game, and the way that he wants to be that guy that's, a coach's dream, essentially, any situation, defending a lead, trying to get the lead or tie a game or whatever it might be. I'm very impressed with Pierre-Luc Dubois and the way that he's kind of handled, this season, especially after the summer that happened. Again, we'll see what happens. It would be devastating for the Jets to lose this guy, though.
They need to figure out a way not just to get him signed, but to do it in the next 5 weeks.
I know. Yeah.
And then announce it at Festival de Voyageur. He could
be brilliant, eh?
It would be. It would be
brilliant.
I mean, I say that kind of half tongue in cheek, but he's very proud, francophone, and I mean, we've got a huge French community, and having a player like that sign on and stay long term would be, I think it would be huge for the organization. Listen, there'd be, well,
Give
you
him
know,
a C while you're there too, right? Like just do it all.
well, I don't know if I'm ready to go that far.
Okay,
Although, you know
all
what? It's a really fascinating conversation. I mean, we've been talking about Josh Morrissey and Adam Lowry as the kind of the two most likely guys to be the next captain of the Winnipeg Jets. And I think a big part of that is they've already committed to the organization. You know, they're going to be here for a number of years. And I think they're, you know, what they bring to the table, we've talked about plenty. I mean, both would be fine choices. Dubois is fascinating, though, when it comes to, I mean, right now, I mean, he wouldn't even be consideration because they don't even know if he's going to be here in, you know, a few months. But as I said, this entire season has been such a turnaround from last year. I mean, I wonder if we backed up his contract and where he was at the end of last season was this season. Is the conversation very different about thinking about signing a long-term deal? One can only hope because, as we said, the guy's just too damn important right now to the Winnipeg Jets to lose. But there could also be some other you know, effects of having a guy like that commit here long-term, especially when it comes to, you know, marketing and, you know, a very proud French community here that still has major ties to the Montreal Canadiens. I'll tell you what, having a French star be here long-term, I think could be, well, could do wonders. Bottom line is, though, they need him on the ice for all the things that we've talked about him doing. I want to get your take on who's going to be out? Who's not going to have a chair at the end of this week? Because we're expecting Perfetti, Ehlers, Wheeler. They'll all obviously go right into the lineup. And man, it's been great to see. A big part of last night, I kind of thought, was that competition amongst guys in that bottom six to remind Rick Bowness that when these guys get healthy, I still deserve a spot in the lineup. I don't know if anybody did that better than Kevin Stenlund and Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, along with Morgan Barron on that third line. And Mikey Eyssimont wasn't there because they did go with the 7D11 forwards, which was very unusual, and that's not something we'll see normally. I mean, how do you see this shaking out? Christian Reichel, Carson Kuhlman, of course. Kuhlman's a little different, though, because if they do put him on waivers, Seattle could just get him back, and it's basically see you later. What's your best guess on how this shakes out, Scott?
The way that they scratched Eyssimont late last night kind of, you know, gives me just a little inkling, I suppose, that he might be the next to go. You know, he had a really good start with the team. I mean, here I was on, I can't remember what show I was on, but, you know, I almost Sharpied him essentially into the roster, just given the way that he was playing. But he obviously, you know, he has regressed a little bit. And they've also found, you know, through that, guys like Kevin Stenlund who've stepped up really in another role. And so Michael Eysimont's role, I think is starting to go the way of Jansen Harkins, where it's just not defined enough. I asked Rick Bowness yesterday about defined roles, and it's something that he really likes. I mean, if you talked about Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, I mean, you know, you talk about strong forechecking and pretty much brilliant on the penalty kill. I mean, those are two, you know, really good assets on this team that Rick Bowness wants in his bottom six. And so I don't think Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, say what you want about, you know, is just as good without a stick as he is with a stick. I mean, that's kind of the running joke with him. But at the same time, I mean, he's so fast and so quick and so adept at closing the gap on both 5-on-5 and 4-on-5. I mean, I think it's those attributes that'll keep him. Kevin Stenlund, faceoffs, and the way that he's what do you want to call him? And when we've called him Blake Wheeler Light because he looks like him, I almost liken him a little bit more to Adam Lowry in the way that he plays his game, though. And he's really good at the faceoff. So I think that's part of, you know, what will keep him in town. So now you're the two others that you're looking at this point. If you're going to bring three guys back, you know, Perfetti's still on the roster. So I made this mistake earlier today, thinking that Perfetti was on IR. He was never put on IR. But yeah, I mean, I think it's probably Eyssimont and perhaps Carson Kuhlman. I mean, it's interesting because it's like, does Carson Kuhlman go off of Scheifele's line and then on to waivers? Like, that's the part that I'm not sure. Like, I don't always see it in Carson Kuhlman, what they see in him.
Well, he's playing in a weird spot. I mean, I got to think that after these guys get back, he gets a run at some point on the fourth line.
Right. And then, so that's the other thing. Okay. So if Nate Schmidt's coming back, I mean, I don't know if we're going to get into this now. Maybe we should. What happens to Villy? Villy's had 3, in my opinion, really good games. It's the consistency. You heard Rick Bowness last night talk about, they're seeing progression in him, and part of, getting that confidence and being.
Well, you know what? Before you mention, hey, Remis. Reem, do you have that clip of Bonus on Villy? Let's play that. Let's crank this out for people that maybe missed it, and we can talk a little bit more. Obviously, Heinola, another great game. Confidence seems to be growing every single time he gets out there, and obviously a big part of what ended up being the winning goal. When Dylan Sandberg popped one over to him, he quickly got it on net, and Mr. Brightside tipped it in. This is Bones on Ville Heinola post-game last night at Canada Life Center.
We'll see what we do, right? Let's give that a day or two to see what we do with our defense. Listen, tonight was how we want him to play, right? He was reliable defensively, but he was skating the puck, and he was using his mobility on the offensive blue line. He's looking to shoot more tonight. Like, we've just been after him to put the puck down, and sometimes you get nervous. You're trying to look just make a play. So we want him to shoot the puck more and use those skills, and he did that tonight.
Do you find that his speed of decision making is becoming more instinctively in NHL?
Yeah, it's quicker. Yeah, and again, you got to play some games up here to get that pace, and that's what the intensity of the players up here and their quickness. And you've got to move your feet quicker. You got to make decisions quicker. Got to move the puck quicker. So it's been better every game. Let's put it that way.
All right, so there's what Rick Bowness had to say about Ville Heinola. I certainly concur with what he's saying. I mean, it's been obvious that his confidence level, his decision-making, he's just getting more comfortable right now. There were some nervous moments, I think, earlier on in the season, and even in that first game on his most recent call-up, he's looked like a different player lately, and the results are following. And that does put them in a bit of a situation, considering how well the rest of the blue line has played for the most of this year. Dylan Sandberg's spot on the club right now, but I mean, Ville Heinola has done exactly what his fans wanted him to do, show them how good he can be, and give them an incredibly difficult decision when a guy like Nate Schmidt comes back into the lineup.
So that's the thing, right? Like, are they going to now send him down? I mean, I thought the Vancouver game was the turning point for Ville, because he showed that he could do it at both ends of the ice, right? And then he plays against Edmonton. The game was not a great game for anybody on the roster other than Connor Hellebuck. But at the same time, I thought Ville had a good game, all things considered. Last night, though, when he seals off Nazem Kadri there, in my opinion, like, that's what Rick Bowness wants to see. They want to see him moving the puck and all that stuff. I get that. But they know that's there for him. What they want to see is this guy capable of going into the defensive zone, making a play, separating a guy from the puck, getting that puck, or whatever it has to be, right? That's what they really wanted to see from Ville, because they need to know that he can play defense. It's whether or not people agree with that or not, that's what Rick Bowness wants. And so that's how, these guys are going to make the team. And so I thought that Ville has really kind of, in this most recent call-up, actually taken that to heart this time, and focused on those moments. He hasn't been as hesitant in the defensive zone. His decision-making is quicker. I mean, Rick Bowness, said it all there. And so, do you now take that guy, after you say that you need these guys playing in the NHL to get that pace and all that sort of stuff, do you now take that guy out of the roster? And that's the thing that I don't know. And so what do you then do? Because now you got, now it's a decision, I suppose, between him and Dylan Sandberg. And Dylan Sandberg has also had his moments lately. And he's also had his, his bad moments, I suppose, too, with those turnovers. But I think Ville needs that chance. I mean, that's my opinion. I don't know. He's also easy. Him and Christian Reichel are the easiest guys to send down, because they're waiver exempt. I think Christian Reichel will eventually get sent down. I think it's just, they wanted a guy on the right side. I think Christian Reichel is brilliant. I think the way that he plays is very smart, and that's what they like. I think he'd be a great addition to that bottom six alongside Adam Lowry, and we saw that, I believe, last year when Reichel was up. I like that idea, But yeah, I mean, this is the problem when it's a good problem, of course, to have. But Rick Bowness said last night, there's a lot of tough decisions that they have to make. Jansen Harkins was the first of them. I didn't think that was that tough. But when you start going now, are you going to, I don't think Senlin's going anywhere. So for me, if the order is, who's going next, it's Esamont, probably Kuhlman, and then you got to decide. I mean, it could be Ville first because it's the easiest.
I think it's Reichel before Kuhlman.
Well,
I mean, he was the last guy
Reichel
up, and the fact
Kuhlman.
he's waivers exempt, and it doesn't. I mean,
I know,
and listen, he's a guy that they
team.
brought up. They brought up last to play in that spot, and listen, he did fine. Don't get me wrong, but again, we don't know who's driving the bus on that line. I mean, there's probably a lot of guys that would be able to be fine in that, and it's just the waivers. I mean, listen, they don't want, and they know they're going to probably need some of these guys. So if they can expose as few players as possible, like back to the blue line for a minute, we know where Sandberg has been all year long, and that's usually in the lineup. Yeah. You know what Ville has brought in right now, and like I'm not sure about Kyle Capobianco if he was sort of an insurance policy if Ville didn't work out. You know what I'm saying? Like, that player that. They know what he is at an NHL level. And listen, I think he's been fine when he's been in. I mean, it certainly hasn't been like he's been an anchor or anything like that. But if they now have the confidence that Ville is going to be the guy that goes in or stays in, at what point do you maybe think that, okay, it's a risk, but you can put Kyle Capobianco on waivers, and assuming that he does clear, he's there with the Manitoba Moose, able to be called up. And if he does get claimed by another NHL team, you've got the confidence in the young Finn that whether in the lineup or as the seventh defenseman, he's there and he'll give you everything and more that you were getting from Capobianco when he's in the lineup.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that is the move. I was talking about this with Mike McIntyre last night. I think he's on the show later today. But I agree. Like, I think he's, if Ville has shown enough, as you said, it's time for Kyle Capobianco to be put on waivers and go from there. I mean, I get that they signed him in the offseason, and maybe he was that insurance policy or that seventh or eighth defenseman, whatever you want to call it. But I think if Ville's doing it, it's Ville time then, right? It's time. 3 years on or 4 years on now from when he was drafted, 3.5 years on from when he was drafted, he's starting to mature into that everyday kind of, or at least that bubble NHL player that could turn into an everyday NHL player. I don't know what else is to say about Ville Heinola. I think it's time though to ride the wave, see where it takes this team. I think he can be put in different situations on the power play. You obviously saw the shot last night. I mean, I think you have to give Ville credit for a lot of what happened on that goal, on the whole lead up. And so that's what he's able to do. If you're willing to give Logan Stanley the time that they have and Dylan Sandberg the time that they have, at what point do you have to give Ville that time? And I get the other two are older.
Well, they don't have to do anything. Like, let's face it, they don't have to do a damn thing. They want to win hockey games, and they're going to make those decisions based on who they think gives them the best chance to win. And that will frustrate some people. I guess the argument right now that I think you can make is that Ville Heinola in the lineup is giving you the best chance to win. And listen, it's not a knock on some of those other players. But I mean, I know we sort of look at this and a lot of people face it like, well, it's what are you doing to develop the player? That ain't Rick Bowness's job. It's to win hockey games, and they've been winning a lot of them right now. But I am with you in that, I mean, we've watched these games, we saw, and he brings something that a lot of the other defensemen with the Winnipeg Jets don't have naturally. And let's think about what Rick Bowness said at the beginning of the season, Scott. Our D are coming. We want them to be more involved. We want them to be difference makers at both ends. He's showing right now that he can handle it in his own end, and the more he plays, he shows the package that he brings that can make a difference in the offensive zone, like we saw getting that puck off quickly from the pass from Sandberg that ended up with Sangagne tipping in the winning goal for the game.
Yeah, and I mean, again, this is the other thing. Like, don't take anything away from Dylan Sandberg. Like, this is the problem, right? They have 7 defensemen that can all play in the NHL, and unless they're going to commit to 11 and 7 every night, that's just the way it's going to be. And obviously last night, Capobianco was only then there in case Josh Morrissey was going to have some issues. Obviously, Josh Morrissey played almost 24 minutes. Capobianco played 4. I mean, that tells you, how good, Josh Morrissey was feeling, or at least good enough, obviously, to basically pull a Scheifele from, a couple nights earlier. So, yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because I know a lot of people want to see Ville, and I do too. Like, I want to see what he can do, where he can take this team. I think he's a very good addition on that back end. And like you said, I mean, he's a guy that will move the puck and will get in on more plays the more his confidence grows. And I think, the idea now that maybe he's sort of figured out, like, I can still play defense. I can play defense and still contribute on offense. I think that takes a lot of time for some defensemen to kind of figure out. Like, I think this took a lot of time for Mark Scheifele to figure out, right? Like, I can play defense and still have, 20 odd goals this year. I mean, that's, those are the things that some guys take years to learn, or at least years of convincing, that they can do this. So, yeah, I agree. And, but I think, in my opinion, it's time to, give Ville a little bit more of a runway here. And maybe you put Dylan Samberg in the box, in the press box for a couple games, for now, and then you waive Capobianco. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens tomorrow. I think, tomorrow will be the day. Well, it will be, because I think you're going to see Schmidt, Ehlers, and probably, all three of those, and Cole Perfetti back in the lineup on Friday against the Tampa Bay Lightning.
What about Wheeler?
Well, I mean, I don't know if he's ready yet. I mean, who knows? Wheeler could come out, and if Wheeler's ready to go, then what? I mean, then you're pushing a lot of guys through waivers, or maybe not. Maybe you're only still pushing two. But Wheeler, I mean, he was still in red, so I'm trying to still get a grasp on what that means with Rick Bowness, because he might not be able to take a contact today, but maybe he takes it on in tomorrow's practice on Thursday there, and then he plays. I mean, that's the thing with Wheeler, is I think it's just, all right, I mean, am I okay if I took another puck right off the junk again? Am I gonna be all right? I don't think he's ever going to take another puck the way he took that puck. So I think it's just a comfort thing probably for Blake. But it does look like at least three of them will be in on Friday, and then they'll go from there. So,
Scotty, it's great stuff as always. Canada going to get this win this afternoon, do you think?
Oh, I mean, I want to say yes, because I mean, you always want Canada to beat the U.S. I mean, that's just the way it goes. But I think they got to bring a certain style of game. I don't think they got to be tighter than they were than in that quarterfinal game against Slovakia. Because I mean, I think the U.S. just is a team that will make you pay a little bit. They'll make you pay. I mean, that's just the way it is. So they're going to need good goaltending, and they're going to need Connor Bedard to be Connor Bedard. And there's no reason to think Bedard's not going to be Bedard. I mean, you just watch him play.
We're going to talk
absolutely ridiculous, but yeah,
we're going to get into Bedard right away with Stephen Ellis from Daily Faceoff. I still can't believe what we saw the other day. I mean, and as I said, if you thought the tanking was bad before this tournament, just wait till you see what happens at the bottom of the National Hockey League.
Well, now they're talking about like Vancouver, right? Like Vancouver might as well just start tanking now to get the hometown kid.
Right? Then they're going to win 2 in a row, and they're going to think, oh, wait, maybe we can win the cup. It's back and forth with Vancouver, much like the weather. Yeah. Have a great one, Scotty. We'll do this again next week. Appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, there's Scott Billeck, our pal from the Winnipeg Sun. All right, we're going to talk a little World Juniors, and then Mike McIntyre is going to join us. But do have to thank our friends at Royal Sports, the #1 sports superstore around. Many of you probably popped in and did some of your Christmas shopping there. But hey, listen, I've got so much more winter to take advantage of. Skate Trail is going to be getting going right now. They've got inexpensive skates, casual skates as well, in addition to great skates for high-performance hockey and everything else when it comes to hockey, including thousands of sticks and more, not to mention your favorite NFL, NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball, soccer merchandise. It's all there at Royal Sports. And make sure to follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. Now, of course, we're now into 2023. And folks, new year, new you, thinking about an upgrade in the wardrobe department? Well, men, get on down to F Apparel, the spot for custom clothing at amazing prices at 190 Smith Street downtown. Custom suits beginning at just $400. And of course, guys, if you are involved in a wedding or a wedding party, talk to Andrew about the great deals for wedding parties where you get a discount for everyone there, as well as a free shirt or other options for you and all the fellas in the wedding party. And great options as well for 2023 grads, whether they be high school graduates or university. All the information's there at F Apparel. Pop down and see Andrew and the gang at 190 Smith Street or online at EPHapparel.com. And hey, if you're looking for a great spot to watch Canada USA, which we're going to be talking about this afternoon, why not make it Boston Pizza? Actually, with the 5:30 kickoff time, you can still slide in under Appy Hour, which of course goes from 3 to 6 each and every day. Make sure to check out that new holiday menu, including the jalapeno popper dip and the mac and cheese burger. And hey, if you're staying at home, you can get the great taste of Boston Pizza by ordering online citywide and in most provinces in the communities in the province with the Boston Pizza online at bostonpizza.com. All right, Mike back with a little more Jets and sports talk later on, but let's welcome in the prospect analyst for Daily Faceoff, Stephen Ellis, to Winnipeg Sports Talk to get ready to drop the puck this afternoon on the semis of the World Juniors. Stephen, what's up? Great to have you on the show.
Busy time, fun time. How you doing?
No doubt. Hey, I got to give you and Frank and the gang, by the way, a big shout out. New site looks great. The little relaunch, as Frank said, doesn't look like NASCAR anymore, but got to say, very clean right now. And obviously, many of us, if you're playing any DFS or betting or an invaluable source, but a lot of other great stuff, including your work following prospects. And man, busy couple weeks for you following this World Junior and speaking to all the great players, including many draft-eligible players that we'll be getting into.
Yeah, it's been a blast, and I will tack Frank, though, for that. I love NASCAR, so NASCAR is great, so I hope that wasn't an actual insult. But yeah, no, the site's great. It's been awesome to be a part of that, and there was a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff to make that work, and yeah, so a lot more content to come.
Well, you got a piece up there, and let's just get right to it. I mean, we can talk about it all, a lot of other topics, but it's Connor Bedard and everything else and everybody else when it comes to this tournament. I mean, what he did on, what was it, Tuesday night was, or Monday night was, we'll be talking about that for years. I mean, the goal, the way he put the team on his back, but it's much more than just one highlight reel goal. I mean, he is now into rarefied air, really history, making history. I mean, breaking all sorts of records, but doing it in such a dominating fashion. We know that this guy has been the number one prospect for the last couple years. Doesn't always pan out that way. And I always say the term generational talent is so overused. Mm-hmm. I think it's appropriate when we're talking about Connor Bedard.
Yeah, like it technically is the same generation as Connor McDavid, but like if he's the second best player in the world, I think whoever gets him is going to be extremely happy no matter what. This is a guy that I think kind of really came on the radar when he was like 12, 13 years old, which is a little absurd, but for a good reason. He was just so good, dominated offensively everywhere he played. He had all the makings of a skilled player where he could shoot well, he could skate well, he was a great playmaker, and he could play defensively. Now we're starting to see a guy who's also not afraid to throw some hits, which I think is pretty entertaining. But this guy's the real deal. And talking to some NHL scouts, trying to get some comparisons, and most scouts don't like doing comparisons because it could kind of skew or cause a bias for a player that might not be a great way of comparing them. Like one comparison for Shane Wright early on was Sidney Crosby, and Sidney Crosby is Sidney Crosby, so I don't think that's a fair comparison. But if you're looking for Bedard, the names that come up are legitimately are Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Patrick Kane, Mitch Marner, like little parts of all those into one guy. So like, yeah, truly this guy is the real deal.
Now, as far as, but like when you're talking to the NHL scouts, and I know Grant McKegg's been on a few times with us, and I saw a tweet from him saying, he was talking to a few people that believe that Bedard next year, even on a garbage team, could probably score 40 in the NHL from the wing in his first year, not maybe having to worry too much about the responsibilities defensively of the center position. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit because he's got to be drafted and find out where he goes, but what do you think his potential is as an 18-year-old rookie in the National Hockey League, based on what we've seen both at the junior level and in a competition like this, playing against older players?
I think if you were to put him in the NHL right now, he would actually probably have a top 10 shot in the league, and it would probably be closer.
I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Probably closer to 5. But this is a guy that first overall prospects get a lot of hype and there's a lot of attention to make sure when they got to go to the NHL right away. They got to be this big impactful player. And then you look at Lafreniere, where he goes to the NHL right away after not playing a hockey game for 8 months. I think that was a terrible decision for him to go to the NHL right away, and terrible for him not to go to the juniors in particular. Then you look at Shane Wright, obviously everything that's happened this year. When you look at Bedard, I have no issues with him going straight to the NHL because what else would he have to accomplish in the WHL? Like if he played the whole season, didn't have to worry about the World Juniors, unless he even played on a slightly better team. This is a guy that could get 160, 170 points in the WHL. So he's ready. I think, the big concern is people say, oh, well, he's not big. It's like, that doesn't matter for everybody. In fact, you look at a lot of smaller guys, they'll actually have pretty decent careers later in their careers because they're not having to throw big hits. And that's not what you're looking for Bedard. You're looking for a guy who produces offense. And I don't know if there's a prospect since McDavid, since Matthews that could produce the level he does.
Now, I could just sit here and talk about Bedard all day long. But I'm interested in what you've thought about Fantilli, because he, of course, is another draft-eligible player. And in bits, when I've seen him play, and I haven't watched the tournament as closely as obviously people like yourself, you see the elite skating along with the package that he brings, and you understand why he's such a tantalizing prospect. Hasn't entirely clicked for him, though, so far. Is he playing maybe in a different role that he normally does? What are you and the scouts having to say about what Adam Fantilli's done for his cause at the World Juniors?
Well, kind of just as of late, he's been playing more in a checking role, which is not really what he does. Before heading to camp, this was a guy that was looking at potentially the best freshman season for an undrafted prospect, or a draft eligible prospect, I should say, since Jack Eichel. So he was putting up some pretty good numbers. I followed him from a young age because he almost got exceptional status to the OHL the same year Shane Wright did. And I think that's something that's kind of overlooked, just how good of a prospect he was kind of valued early on. And I think that he's got the size that you're looking for. He's got a good shot. He can play physical. He can be dominant around the net. I think, though, with this team, they haven't really used him in that role, which I get. This team had a lot of offensive depth, and he started in the top 6. It wasn't working. They swap lines around, and Bedard goes on that line instead. And obviously, we're seeing what Bedard's been doing ever since. So Fantilli's just kind of been the odd man out. I think if he was playing in this tournament next year, which I'm not convinced he would, he'd be the number 1 centerman. I think he'd be playing such a big role. But I think just the fact there's so much depth, and there's some NHL guys that have played in the NHL already that play the same position ahead of him, he was just kind of the guy that had to get shuffled out. So I'm not too worried about it. We see this from time to time where one prospect kind of just blows everyone out from the water, and a number 2 prospect doesn't do as much, but they are playing kind of different roles on the same team.
Is he still the number 2 prospect in your mind going into the draft? And maybe if so, fill us in on who's behind that of draft eligible players that are participating in this tournament.
He's number 2. I still think Leo Carlsson's put in a good argument for that. He's been really good in the Swedish men's league, which is hard to do as a young player. One that I really was impressed with was David Reinbacher on Austria, and you probably wouldn't notice it much because Austria got obliterated every game. But you watch him today against Latvia; he was the best player on the ice, and he was the best player for Austria every game he played. He's put himself in the first round conversation. One guy that it's too bad we're missing him is Matvei Michkov from Russia, because the battles that he and Bedard had at the U18s a couple years ago was out of this world. It was like you would have not believed it if you didn't watch it, how good of a battle that was between those two guys all tournament long. And to see him not be able to participate in this tournament, obviously because of what's gone on in Russia.
Hey, let me ask you this about Michkov quickly, sort of interrupt. If he was Canadian, and was under basically the same circumstances as the other players that we're talking about right now, exact same player, how close would he be to Bedard, and would he be the number 2 guy in the draft?
It's so tough just because the way the pathways of where Michkov got to, where he's been playing pro hockey for a few years. But I think for sure this was a guy that before the season was still number 2, and there was legitimate talk as a number 1. I think if he was probably playing here this whole time, I think maybe he's putting up the same numbers as Bedard. They're slightly different players. He's not big himself, but he's truly one of the most skilled players I've ever seen. Maybe the most skilled Russian in particular. This is a guy that one time attempted 3 lacrosse goals in the same game, and I think he got 2 of them. So he's an incredible talent. It's a shame kind of what's going on, but because we won't get to see him at the international level, but I still have hope that he's one of the best prospects for this draft. I think maybe if we're talking a couple years from now, he's maybe the 3rd or 4th best.
It'll be fascinating to see how NHL teams handle that and how far his situation, because of course he is signed, I think, till 2026. Now you could buy a team out, but there's a lot more baggage that comes along with that. And then obviously everything that's happening geopolitically, it does not help his cause as well. All that being said, some incredible draft eligible prospects in this tournament right now. And then we move on to the semifinals, and let's focus in on Canada and the USA. I mean, for all the brilliance of Connor Bedard, this team barely got past the Slovaks while the U.S. was absolutely thumping their opponent. Canada, of course, is going to be a favorite. I think that will just happen when the Canadian jerseys are on in a tournament like this on home ice. But how close of a toss-up do you think this matchup is? And what are the keys to Canada other than Connor Bedard being Connor Bedard getting past the Yanks this afternoon?
Well, I think the one thing is Canada can at least claim they beat Slovakia, because the Americans did lose to Slovakia and they were quite outplayed in that game early in the tournament. But I think since then, the Americans have just played a much better team game. Their defense has been hit or miss, but when they're on, they've got probably the best defense group in the tournament. And that's something Canada has really struggled with, is been playing their own zone. Offensively, Jimmy Snuggerud, Logan Cooley, Ruger McGrody, those guys have all been fantastic. And the goaltending's been really good. Trey Augustine, he's a 23 draft prospect. He's 17 years old. He's the youngest starting goalie in this tournament. So I think in this case, it's just one team's bigger stars have to outplay the other team's biggest stars, because they do match up and they kind of cancel each other out. I think Thomas Milic has been good for Canada. And when Canada's defense is rock solid like they were against Sweden, I think there's less of a concern. So I think this is something where I'm still giving the edge to Canada in pure skill, but the Americans, I feel this kind of feels disappointed. This is not the championship game.
Yeah, I think that will be. What about the other one, which is going to be getting underway probably as we're talking about right now? Sweden the favorite in this one. Do you expect to see the Swedes in the gold medal game?
Well, it's currently in the first intermission. I was watching it right before getting on here. I'm not totally sure if anyone's score, but I'm going actually with the Czechs. The Czechs have just looked much better. And if you look at Sweden, they were losing that game against Finland until like the final 2 minutes and scored 2 quick goals, and it was game over. So Sweden's got a lot to worry about. Their offense hasn't been clicking like we thought they would after playing Austria. Their defense is, I'd say, probably their biggest weakness. The goaltending, I think, for Sweden and Czechia both kind of they cancel each other out. They're both really good. But the Czechs are just playing better as a unit. And I think they're getting all the lines to contribute. And their defense, I don't know if there's been a team that can utilize the blue line for offense like the Czechs. So I'm handing it to the Czechs right now. Again, I'm not totally sure if there's a score yet. But
yeah, 0-0 after 1 right now. They're at the intermission.
There you go. So it was a very good first period from what I saw.
Hey, before we go, let me ask you from a prospect standpoint, and we've talked about Carlson and a couple of the big guys, but is there a player or two that has really been able to boost their draft stock amongst scouts with their performance here at the World Juniors?
For sure. And it's actually going to be a re-entry guy in Adam Gajan, the Slovak goalie. We all saw what he did with 53 saves against Canada. But he had a few games like that. He stole the game against the Americans.
Where's that guy playing? Chippewa? Like, what league is that?
He played in the NAHL, which is like the second tier of junior hockey in the States. And now he moved to the USHL, and he will play in the NCAA next year. He's a guy that played in the Slovak U20 league. And talking to scouts, no one knew who he was. The Slovak national team did not know who he was until a couple of days before leaving for Halifax and Moncton. So he's been kind of just unbelievable. And his body of work this year shows it's not just a couple good games. This is a guy who has legitimate potential. He's 6'4" too. So I think he's going to get drafted.
Well, tell you what, first things first, we'll see how things go this afternoon. I guess I just have to quickly ask you, you mentioned Rutger McGroarty. Jets have 3 first-rounders playing the event. What'd you see from Rutger, Chaz Lucius, and Brad Lambert on Team Finland?
Well, I think the 2 Americans have been awesome. They've been huge pieces of this team. Obviously, Lucius came in. He was hurt. He didn't really participate much in camp, and it was a question of how valuable he was going to be to this team, but he's been great. And McGroarty, obviously, he's such a skilled player. It's unfair that the Jets have those two guys in their system. Brad Lambert, though, I'm going to be writing about him soon. I was very unimpressed with his tournament, and there's just a lot of things there that concern me. I was very high on the Brad Lambert train a couple of years ago. This is a guy that just the effort concerns me. He had 1 point in the entire tournament, and that he was just non-existent against Sweden. He was a guy who needed to stand up, and he didn't.
What is it? I mean, because we remember that Lambert, in the summer in that event wasn't even in the lineup for the last couple of games with everything on the line. I mean, is this just he doesn't fit within the framework of the national junior team, or is there more to it? Because certainly when we saw him at training camp here, we've seen him at times with the Manitoba Moose. I mean, he has all world skill and talent. And, in a tournament like this, you would think that this would be a perfect opportunity to really show it off, but that hasn't been the case.
And he's got the experience of playing on North American ice, so he knows the smaller angles and he could use that speed to his advantage. But he kind of had a rough go before heading to the tournament in Manitoba, and then obviously not a great tournament here. And that summer tournament, I sometimes forgot he was playing. So that's a guy that, again, so much talent, but if you could put it together, it's a different story. The issue is actually making a complete 60 game, and I don't think he's been able to do that in a long time. And so I am a little concerned.
Well, I'll tell you what, this has been a lot of fun having you on the program, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about Canada and Connor Bedard. One more chance to see Bedard wearing the red and white in the final, but should be a great one against the USA. Stephen Ellis is the associate editor and prospect analyst for Daily Faceoff. Say hi to Frank and the gang, and thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Appreciate it. All right, Mike McIntyre is going to be jumping on with us in just a minute. But of course, I have to give a huge thanks to our great friends at Princess Auto for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Of course, great sponsors of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers as well. And of course, Manitoba's top curling teams, including Reed Carruthers and Team Jennifer Jones. And Princess also, as you mostly know, is the spot where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Visit them at one of two Winnipeg locations, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, of course, national headquarters right here in Winnipeg as well. Or you can shop online and get those wheels turning on your next project 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Big happy new year to our friends at Culligan Water, who have been the water experts in the PEG as a family-owned business for over 65 years. With everything you and your family need: water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, whole home systems, drinking water systems, and citywide water delivery services, and commercial and industrial water products and solutions. The Culligan experts are at 1200 Sargent. You can phone them up at 694-5180 or find out all their products and services and what they can do for you and your family online at drinkculligan.com. And speaking of New Year's, I know there was many people enjoying the great taste of Canadian Club, Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey, over the course of the holidays. As you get into 2023 and you're making that next trip to Manitoba Liquor Marts, make sure to get the good stuff, the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers Canadian Club. And keep an eye on those Jim Beam displays for remaining quantities of the Blue Bomber Collector Glass set. Jack Caleros, Adam Bighill, Nick Dembski, available for free with a purchase of Jim Beam at your local Manitoba Liquor Marts. All right, let's get back to the Jets and more of the big stories of the day with Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. Michael, what's up? Best of the season to you and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Huss. Life is good. Sunny outside. I got two snoozing pups beside me or around me here in the living room, and maybe they'll wake up and make a cameo. And hey, if you're a Jets fan, teams won 3 in a row. Bunch of players are coming back into the lineup. What's there to complain about?
No doubt about it. Should be a fun night tonight with the skills competition as well. And vibes are good around the Winnipeg Jets. They really have been throughout this season. But I know there was maybe a little bit of concern the way things ended going into Christmas, and then loss at home to the Minnesota Wild on the 27th. But man, what a week for the Winnipeg Jets. Bouncing back, running the gauntlet of Vancouver, Edmonton, and Calgary with wins against all three teams, and now back to 11 games above 500 and comfortably in second in the Central Division, Mike. Oh, we just dropped Mike.
It's back to the all Canadian division, just like a couple of years ago, and the Jets, of course, fared pretty well that season in the modified Canadian division. And they, as you say, they had a great week. You think back to just last Thursday afternoon, Huss, they had lost 3 in a row. Calgary and Edmonton, although they're not in the same division, the Jets were on the verge of falling into the wild card position out of the top 3. Colorado and Minnesota were hot on their heels. And so Calgary and Edmonton were suddenly, teams that they were trying to keep at bay. And even Vancouver had gone on a little bit of a run by their standards. And, they were now within shot of the Jets. So 3 losses in a row, and the team still was without 7 regulars, Cole Perfetti being the latest. Things could have gone south in a hurry had they not performed over these last 3 games. Instead, the Jets really tightened up. The penalty kill's been tremendous. Pretty much won them that game. There's Piper coming in for a cameo. The PK pretty much won them the game in Edmonton, and then a couple of real solid home performances. I mean, Connor Hellebuck is playing like Connor Hellebuck. But now 3 wins in a row. Suddenly, Calgary and Edmonton are quite a bit further back now in the rearview mirror. The Jets are back to being quite comfortably in that top 3 in the Central Division, and Vancouver now is pretty much out of the picture when it comes to the Jets. So yeah, life moves fast. Things can change in a hurry, and the Jets rattling off 3 straight was big for the confidence, and obviously big for their lot in the standings.
I don't want to, we're going to get into, the players coming back and what other moves are going to be made to accommodate that. But I don't want to skip over Connor Hellebuck because I thought that he was just so brilliant to finish off 2022, Mike. And he started off the new year the way he finished it off. It was a great goaltending duel, really, for the first couple periods. I thought Jacob Markstrom made some monster saves as well. But this is a guy that, and it's hard to even quantify the confidence level that he gives his team and the coaching staff, considering that, when Hellebuck is on, which is pretty much every night, you are going to be given a chance to win. He'll hold you in even if things don't go well for a particular period of time. And to me, there's been so many great stories about this team. It's easy to almost overlook just how good he has been all season long, but especially as of late on this run.
Well, and the national audience got to see it once again on Saturday night on New Year's Eve, where I think we would all agree the other Connor McDavid is the best player in the game, but it was Winnipeg's Connor.
2 Connors are better than 1, Mike.
Exactly. And the other Connor the Jets have, Kyle Connor, he's pretty good too. Something about that name, whether it's the first or last name, creates pretty good hockey players. And that Bedard kid isn't bad either. So note to parents out there, if you want a future hockey star, just name your kid Connor. Seems to be the magic formula. But you're right. One thing that really has helped Connor Hellebuck, I think, Huss, the schedule has really kind of eased up. And, the Jets, Connor Hellebuck and the Jets, they were playing a lot of hockey in December. Of course, David Riddick ended up playing a few more games. Hellebuck had that spell where
Big Save Dave's been great. Outside of that first 20 minutes in Vegas, I think he has been everything the Jets could have wanted, to get out of it. And you mentioned the schedule, Mike. Let me just point out, 2 days off before a big game against Tampa, you'd have to assume that he gets in there. Normally, I would think that, okay, well, maybe Big Save Dave gets in there on Sunday, but it's one of those afternoons. We've been calling Connor Hellebuck Mr. Matinee for a long time. He seemingly never loses in the afternoon for the most part. And then you get into 3 and 4 with back-to-backs in Buffalo and Pittsburgh. So I do wonder, does Connor run these next few starts before the back-to-backs? It might be a little long before Rittich gets back in, but it's hard to pull him out right now when he's playing the way he is and the team's winning.
For sure. I personally think there's a very good chance Rittich plays on Sunday for no other reason, Huss, that Rick Bowness said earlier in the year that he doesn't want to go more than about 7 or maybe 10 days between starts for the backup. This Friday will mark 2 weeks since Rittich last took the net. And if Connor Hellebuyck does kind of run the table on these next games, really the next game Rittich is slated for is that Friday game next Friday in Pittsburgh after the game in Buffalo the night before. But that would then be 3 full weeks between games. I don't know if that's, what the Jets want. Maybe they do. At this point, like you say, it's not like Connor Hellebuyck is being overtaxed or looking tired. And, he's got it down to a real science, Huss, and he works really well with Wade Flaherty and the coaching staff. For example, Connor Hellebuyck didn't take the morning skate yesterday. And I think a big reason for that is the Jets did something the day before that they haven't been able to do a whole lot of, which is practice. And so Connor Hellebuyck obviously got the work that he felt he needed in the day before. So he takes the morning off, which we don't see a whole lot of. but again, the Jets' schedule hasn't lent itself to a lot of practice lately. So whatever Connor Hellebuyck's doing, obviously, it ain't broke, so you're not going to try and fix it. But I am curious to see if Rittich potentially gets the net this Sunday afternoon. It would give Connor Hellebuyck a few extra days between. We know he's playing next Tuesday, Huss, in Michigan. There's no chance. The Jets play 1 game a year in his home state. He's getting that game. And then he'll obviously play one of the 2 back-to-backs. Presumably, he'd get the first game in Buffalo next Thursday. But, if the Jets wanted to give him an extra couple days, it's possible that Rittich plays Sunday afternoon. And as you say, it's not like David Rittich has done anything to not inspire confidence. So, I think you could probably look to that as a good time to get him in. Regardless, the Jets are playing well lately. Doesn't matter really who's in net. The system that they have, they're playing it to a T. And what this team has, Huss, is a formula. They have a recipe for success, one that doesn't really seem to matter who's on what line, who's in or out of the lineup. It goes back to what Rick Bowness has been preaching from the start. I suppose the next challenge now, if you're the Jets, and I'd file this under really good problems to have, how do you integrate now an infusion of talent that's going to come back, seemingly all at once with potentially 3 guys coming in on Friday? You got to make sure, obviously, that you're not getting away from what's worked so well, and that'll be a challenge for Rick Bowness and the players.
Well, let's talk about that. We were just talking goalies. Let's move from the net out and start on the blue line. I think everyone I certainly have been really impressed with Ville Heinola, and he continues to raise his game, his comfort level, his confidence, his effectiveness in both ends every time out. He'll be a tough guy to pull out of the lineup right now, Mike. Nate Schmidt is coming back. As far as the blue line goes, how do you see this shaking out in the short term, like over the next week when Schmidt's back?
Yeah, to me, that's the toughest call of all. No disrespect to the forwards. I think Rick Bowness probably wouldn't lose a ton of sleep over who comes out on the forward group. But Ville is a really interesting case because I think, Huss, we're seeing what we thought would happen if you started to play Ville Heinola on a consistent basis. And that is he's getting more and more comfortable with each game. And this bit of a run, and even Brendan Dillon talked about it post-game last night, that, with a young player like that, he just needs a little bit of runway. And, I thought he was tremendous last night. And one thing, forget about the assist on the game winner, which was a great play and a great shot by him. Sam Gagner gave him credit. One thing I really liked from Ville's game last night was his physicality, which, he was not intimidated at all by a Calgary team that, let's face it, is one of the most physical in the NHL. They got a bunch of guys, especially forwards, that forecheck really hard, take no prisoners approach. We saw a lot of big hits again last night. David Gustafsson was on the receiving end of a few, absolute crunchers. Ville Heinola gave as much as he got, and that was impressive. and had to, really make Rick Bowness and the coaching staff think there's more to this player than maybe they've seen already. So, Nate Schmidt comes in, and I think we all assume that Vili's the guy that comes out since there's that similar offensive role. But I don't know. I mean, do you potentially take Dylan Sandberg, who I love what Dylan Sandberg brings, but, I think there's been parts of Dylan Sandberg's game over the last couple of weeks where, he's made some mistakes. Maybe he could benefit from, a game or two in the press box. Maybe there's a rotation that comes into play here over the next bit with Sandberg and Heinola, depending on, matchup and opponent. I just think at this point, if you just now rip Ville Heinola out of the lineup and say, great job, but back to the Moose you go, I just be a little worried about what that says to the player, what that kind of impact it could have. And I'm not sure that that's the automatic move that happens. It'll be very interesting to see at practice tomorrow, assuming Nate Schmidt's ready to go, what the D pairs look like and what the plan is for Ville.
I'm with you on his performance last night and the way he handled the physicality of Calgary. I mean, I really think that was the reason why he wasn't in the lineup on the 27th against the Minnesota Wild. I mean, at times, Ville, and he's certainly not the only one on the blue line, but when you think about him, his size, his makeup, I mean, he's great when he's got the puck, but, when you got a Ryan Reeves bowling you over, I mean, how effective will you be? But I think even more so, and we heard it from Rick Bowness last night with how impressed he was on the decision-making and what he was able to do in both ends. And I'm sort of with you. I mean, this is a very, very good problem to have. And the one thing I will say is Rick Bowness needs and will make decisions on what he thinks. This is not a development league. He's not trying to develop players. He's trying to win hockey games right now. And he'll put the lineup card with the six best guys that I think gives him the best chance to win. But considering what we heard from Rick Bowness at the start of the year, our D are coming, wants the defense to be more activated, and watch what Ville's done with this most recent opportunity, you can certainly make the argument, and I will, that Ville Heinola is probably in the Jets' top 6 right now. And that being said, it is somewhat of a luxury right now with some really quality players that might not be in the lineup or potentially even on the roster, because Logan Stanley's going to come back at some point. And, I do wonder if I'll ask you this. So we were talking about with Billeck earlier. Has the ascendance of Heinola and the way he's played, has that given them enough confidence to keep Ville on the roster, potentially at the expense of exposing and maybe even losing Kyle Capobianco on waivers if he's the odd man out?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And, I still think the Jets are more likely to carry, if they were going to go that route and they want to keep Ville around, then maybe they go with 8D once everybody's healthy and just the one extra forward in the mix. But, and clearly they've been worried about losing Capobianco all season because, going back to camp, it was Kovacevic that was put on waivers, not Capobianco. And even though Kyle Capobianco hasn't played a whole lot, I think they really like him as that guy, that can go weeks without playing, that puts in the extra work, with the other scrubs, the other scratches after practice, and doesn't, complain about it. You're not stunting his development. He's 25, almost 26. He's a bit of a journeyman. He doesn't need to play games. You're not worried about what it means for his future. You are obviously with Ville. And I think, again, it goes back. It feels like we've been saying this now for a couple of years about Ville. If he's not in your top 6, he's better off with the Moose as, your number one guy, because he's, there's some benefit to practicing, although the Jets haven't practiced a whole lot. But sure, there's benefits to being around the team, and there's a benefit to your paycheck, Huss. A lot of people always say, oh, I feel so bad for Ville. He's up with the Jets, but he's not playing. Well, you know what? His paycheck, don't feel sorry for what that looks like, because that's about 90% higher every day that he's up with the Jets. But that being said, he needs to play. I just think he's now shown enough in this short run here. I'd be intrigued to continue to give him a run, even with Nate Schmidt back. And going back to your point, Huss, Villy plays the kind of game that Rick Bowness wants. And again, Exhibit A is last night's game winner. He generated the game-winning goal with a great low shot from the point, and Sam Gagner doing what Rick Bowness has been saying his team needs to do a lot of. That's become a bread and butter of the Jets, and it never used to be. They were a perimeter team. We used to see the Jets give up those goals all the time, the tips, the deflections. You know, Brendan Dillon, as he said after the game, that one went off his ass last night. And what's Brendan Dillon doing standing in front of the net? Well, the D are coming, as Rick Bowness said. So he jumps up. He said that he saw Mark Scheifele was covering at the point. Brendan Dillon goes to the net. He's a big body. And Dylan DeMello, of all people, gets the puck to him, and it goes in off his butt into the net. I mean, how many times have we seen the Jets get burned by those kind of goals? Now they're the team that is leaving the opponents kind of scratching their head about the kind of goals Winnipeg's scoring. So in that sense, Villy adds to the weaponry that the Jets have. And why would you, can you have too much of a good thing? I don't know. I mean, obviously you still have to worry about things like penalty kill and, the physical element. But if you feel like you have enough to still take care of that, plus have a weapon like Ville Heinola in the lineup, I don't see at this point how you go away from that. They've won 3 in a row. And he's played great in all 3 of those games.
No, it's a great point. Mike McIntyre, the Free Press, is with us. It's even more interesting up front because Cole Perfetti's going to be coming back into that lineup. Blake Wheeler's coming back. And maybe most importantly of all, Nikolai Ehlers is scheduled to return after missing the entire season outside of the first 2 games of the year. And there's a potential they all come back at once, Mike. I mean, guys that weren't here or weren't really in the plans before include Christian Reichel, the most recent recall, who was playing with Connor and Dubois last night.
Yeah.
Carson Kuhlman, who has come on waivers and essentially been a mainstay in the top 6, playing with Mark Scheifele since he arrived from Seattle. You've got Mikey Esamont, who was the odd man out last night when they went to 11-7 and has been in the press box a little bit more often than he was earlier. Axel Jonsson-Fjällby has come over on waivers. And the one guy that I think, and I said this a couple weeks ago early on when he showed up, but I've been more and more confident of this take, is Kevin Stenlund ain't going anywhere right now.
No.
Now, he may move down to the 4th line. He might play with Lowry. He could maybe bounce David Gustafsson to the wing or potentially to the press box. But I'm pretty sure Stenny's sticking around. So when push comes to shove and guys either need to be put on waivers or cleared out, who are the unfortunate ones that don't have a spot?
Yeah, to start with your point on Stenlund, agreed. He's not going anywhere. And, I'm looking at, imagine Huss in a week or so, once Wheeler's back and Ehlers and Perfetti, and those guys are all presumably going back into the top 6. You potentially could have a third line of like Lowry, Barron, and Stenlund, and what an absolute handful those 3 big men could be, as a
That'd be one of the biggest lines in the league.
For sure. And, there's some offense there, but that wouldn't be their prime goal. Now your top 6 is loaded because you've got Ehlers and Wheeler and Perfetti back in. And now you've got a big, the season began with Mason Appleton with Barron and Lowry. Now you'd say have Stenlund potentially in there. And then your 4th line, I think we assume Gustafsson is remaining in the lineup. Sam Gagner, again, the guy, he's, I think, exceeded expectations. And he could be a guy that every now and then you spell him off, but he's a perfect kind of 4th line guy. And then, who else is on that 4th? Like you got Saku Manalainen, who's on his way back and was really kind of picking up his game and also was on that 3rd line for a while, and could be a fit. It could be Manalainen with Barron and Lowry. And then
we haven't even mentioned Mason Appleton either. And I know he's probably a little bit further off, but one of the great stories of this club for anyone that's been paying close attention to the beginning of the season has been how so many guys that were either out of the mix or sort of afterthoughts have gotten chances and made the most of them, Mike. And this must be these are really, really tough calls right now. I mean, both from a personal standpoint of what the guys have brought in, but also in exposing assets, whether, it comes to waivers. I mean, Reichel was the last guy to come up. I assume that he's probably gone. Esamon probably finds himself on waivers. Coolman's interesting because if they did put him on, Seattle can grab him back and send him to Coachella Valley. Essentially, you're losing him, and now he's no longer part of the option. I would imagine that he'll stick around long enough when the big boys come back to get a run and a look in what was probably the original plan for him to be playing in a bottom six role.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I'm not sure I agree with you on Gus being in the lineup anymore. I mean, if Kevin Stenlund is not on Lowry's line, if Menelainen's back and he gets back into that spot, I think we're talking about Kevin Stenlund centering that second line. And the question is, does Gus have a spot on the wing, or is he potentially in the press box? Because it's been very clear since the day Stenlund got here that Rick Bowness has way more confidence in Stenlund, first and foremost in the face-off dot. And we know how important that is to Bones, especially with the struggles of some of his other centers.
Stenlund was out in the final minute last night taking draws. You're right. He's and that's an area that the Jets, have been trying to improve on, and he's helped for sure in that department. We have seen Gustafsson, of course, move to the wing. Stenlund at it for a time was centering that fourth line, and Gustafsson moved over to the wing. And again, we go down the list. I don't think Axel Jonsson-Fjällby's going back on waivers.
He's played some of his best hockey of the season since he was sat in the press box a few weeks ago. I have loved his game in the last 2 weeks.
And Rick Bowness loves the speed, that he brings, and obviously the forecheck. There's not much offense there at all, but that's not his role. They've more than had enough offense this year, even with some big guns out of the lineup. And now that they're getting the likes of Ehlers and Perfetti and soon Wheeler back, they don't need Axel Jonsson-Fjällby. I mean, sure, the occasional chip in here or there is nice. They need him to be hard on the forecheck. Obviously, the penalty kill, which has been hugely improved, and he's a big part of that. That there are so many options, Huss, you're right. And, so it may mean that a guy like Christian Reichel, as capable as he's filled in on the top six, he might be the one that quickly goes back to the Moose, and it would almost feel unfair. And through no fault of anything he's done, it's just they now are a lot deeper than they probably thought. Maybe they did think they were that deep. I don't know. I don't think we thought they were that deep when it comes to, the talent pool. And part of that is we didn't know a lot of these guys. We didn't know Saku Manalainen, and we didn't know Kevin Stenlund when he signed in the offseason. Obviously, Coolman and Fjällby were waiver pickups. We didn't know Michael Esamon had the kind of game, that he has. And I think Esamont's probably going back. I mean, the writing's on the wall that he was the one healthy scratch last night. And again, he hasn't done anything wrong per se. He's just maybe, we're seeing maybe the law of diminishing returns a little bit on this guy. But I think there's still an NHL player there. And he could go back down to the Moose, assuming another team doesn't grab him, and that's going to be a risk, obviously, for the Jets, and be a valuable contributor potentially again down the stretch should the injury bug bite. But yeah, I mean, it's a great problem to have. The Jets are deeper than we thought, and it's why a guy like Jansen Harkins is now back with the Moose. One thing I'll say about Rick Bowness, Huss, that's become very clear, that's different from, say, the past under Paul Maurice. It almost used to be a rule that kind of last guy up, first guy back down, right? Didn't matter how the guy played. There was a pecking order, and there wasn't a lot of movement to that order, rightly or wrongly. We've seen, though, under Rick Bowness, there can absolutely be movement, and Jansen Harkins is exhibit A of that. He was pretty much the first guy called up when all these injuries started to happen. He's now been passed by a ton of guys: Reichel, Stenlund, Esamont, Coolman, who wasn't even with the team when Harkins got called back up. And we're not even talking about Dominic Toninato, who also was here at one point and again has been passed by all these other guys that, when you made a depth chart at the beginning of the year, would not have been ahead of him. So it just shows, and I think the message that Rick Bowness has sent to his group is a real good one. And it goes back to what we're saying about Billy, that if you play well, we'll find room for you somehow. And, the Jets, as much as they're going to try and stick to that message, they may be at a point here now where they don't have room for everyone that's played well, just because they're going to get so many guys back at once. No,
it is a great point. It is a good problem to have. And as I say, I mean, first and foremost, the record is what's important, and the Jets continue to win and continue to push themselves towards the midway point of the season in a comfortable playoff spot. But there's been a lot of guys that have had a hand in that. And listen, both from a coaching perspective and certainly from a general manager's perspective, they want to keep these guys. And part of the reason why it might be unfortunate for a Reichel or even a Sandberg or Hanel if they do get sent down because of, being ineligible for waivers is the fact that I know we always live in the moment and it's all about the game and the next lineup. I think the Winnipeg Jets know that if they are going to make a splash come playoff time, everyone is going to be called upon and everyone is going to be needed. I mean, they've been relatively healthy on the blue line, minus the Stanley injuries and what's recently happened to Nate Schmidt. It's been a very different story with the forward group. That could absolutely change in the second half of the season. So maybe not. It's important, I think, not to take too much from these immediate moves, other than the fact that if a player is picked up off on waivers, they might not be coming back. And and that, and I wonder about Kyle Capobianco, whether he would be a player that would get selected. We know the need for defense in and around the league in a lot of markets, at a relatively low salary. And as far as the forwards right now, I mean, Koeman did get picked up by the Winnipeg Jets. If he goes on, does Seattle quickly snap him back up? Is there someone else that makes a claim? And even a player like Mikey Esamont. So all of that will flesh itself out over the course of the next few days. What's Piper's take? Who does Piper have being the
so big, let me of course, those listening on the podcast won't be able to see this absolute adorableness, but this is Piper and Bodie. She's actually using him as a pillow right now. So she's on his back, and he's a great pillow to have. So yeah, that is that's kind of life around here. The dog days of January, I guess, is what we're in. Hey, let me ask you a question, Huss, just about the top six for a second. How do you think Rick Bowness, once Blake Wheeler's back, does he go back to how he started the season? And people may forget how they started the season because it only lasted 2 games. You'll recall that Mark Scheifele was put with Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers, and everybody saw that as the goodwill gesture towards Mark Scheifele, right? Put him with the 2 most dynamic wingers on the team. That line was destined for great things. I remember writing a training camp story in Banff. They could be one of the best lines in the NHL, I wrote, and I believe that. But it lasted 2 games. Ehlers got hurt. He's been out for the last 30-plus games. Do you potentially go back to that, which would mean splitting Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor?
Hard no.
And of course, Dubois started the year with Wheeler and Perfetti. I agree with you. I don't think at this point you're splitting Dubois and Connor up. I think you're probably playing Scheifele and Ehlers together. So maybe is it Scheifele Wheeler Ehlers? Is it Scheifele Perfetti Ehlers? Ehler and Wheeler with Dubois and Connor? I mean, again, good problems to have. A lot of choices there, but I'll be really interested to see. And we won't cross that bridge immediately because Blake Wheeler is going to be a little bit further back behind Perfetti and Ehlers. But I think Blake Wheeler could be back in a week or so when we're on the road trip next week. And so I'll be really interested to see what Rick Bowness does with that top 6.
Well, I'm with you. And first of all, I'm a hard no on splitting up 80 and 81. I mean, those guys are just too effective together. And essentially you can almost put, with all due respect, anybody with those guys.
They have put almost anybody.
That's exactly right. And they continue, to be the top 2 scorers up front for the Winnipeg Jets so far this season. What I'm interested in, and let's get to this, Nikolai Ehlers activated for Friday, even without Blake Wheeler in the mix. Does he roll with Mark Scheifele, or does he get up on the line with Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois? The one thing we've seen, and this is, I mean, I'm not sure why this is, But there have been some players in the past that just haven't really gelled well with Ehlers, despite everything that he does on the ice, all the great analytics. It hasn't always been a great fit. And Pierre-Luc Dubois has been one of those guys, if you recall. Yeah. I mean, they've played together a lot, and it hasn't always worked. Certainly nothing like it's happening with Connor right now.
Yeah.
But again, the opportunity to put Ehlers in a position like that, you would think that it should work. Is that where they start? Or do they put Ehlers with Mark Scheifele and potentially Cole Perfetti as well, and then have the opportunity for Wheeler to slide in and maybe even be the guy on that Dubois line,
Connor line,
going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a good chance, because I think one thing you probably want to do is keep Cole Perfetti potentially on the left side. I mean, and again, the Jets almost by necessity at times have had to move him to the right side because the right side's been decimated. Obviously with the likes of Wheeler and Ehlers and Appleton getting hurt. But Cole Perfetti seems more comfortable on the left. So, having Connor and Perfetti being your two left wingers, Ehlers and Wheeler being your two right wingers, and then Dubois and Scheifele your two centers. I do think Ehlers slides probably back with Scheifele right off the hop here, and maybe, as you say, Perfetti as well. It would allow Adam Lowry, who's been playing left wing with Mark Scheifele, to go back to the third line. Then the question becomes, as you said earlier, what do you do with Kevin Stenlund? Does he go back to the fourth line to center that, or does he slide to the wing with Lowry? There will be a domino effect for sure. And again, going back to your question earlier, what does it mean for guys like Kuhlman and Reichel? Do they go down to the fourth line? Do they come right out of the lineup? Does Reichel go right back to the Moose? A lot of decisions that will have to be made, and we should get a hint, I would think, at tomorrow's practice. The Jets, they are skating tonight, as you mentioned off the top, but it's the skills competition, so a lot of fun will be had, but we won't get any real hint of any lineup decisions looming. But it should be an interesting few days, and great opponent in town on Friday. They're not the 3-time Stanley Cup champs, but they are the recent 2-time Stanley Cup champs and a force to be reckoned with. So it'll be a great matchup for what should be a much more talented Jets roster than the one we've seen for months now.
Well, and the funny thing is, I mean, you got a big time opponent coming to town for a Friday night game. And for all those players that are going to be getting back into the lineup, there have been some guys in there that have been doing a pretty good job. So the bar has been set high for Rick Bonus's club, and it'll be time to produce. Mike, great stuff as always. Enjoy skills tonight, and we'll see you at the rink later on this week.
Sounds good, Huss. Take care.
There's Mike McIntyre, along with Piper and Bodie, two WST favorites. I love the fact that there's a Piper emoji now. Everyone's having some fun with that in the chat. That is great. Oh, yes, and Todd Fertani, Remo needs a blender emoji. A blender emoji certainly would be something that could go well for us. We're going to get Remo back in here in just a minute. But I do have to give a big Happy New Year and thanks to our friends at the Nick and Nicky DQ group. All of our favorites. It's blizzard season in Manitoba, 12 months a year. They've even got new blizzard cakes if you haven't tried it before. Filled blizzards and more. And not to mention some of the most delicious offerings when it comes to all the food offerings there, including those amazing stack burgers, fries, chicken fingers, and of course more. 4 locations: DQ Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, and DQ St. Anne's. Pop by and tell them Huss and Remo sent you. And of course, you can hit them up online or order a cake on Instagram if you'd like, customized at DQ Manitoba. And hey, a big shout out to our friends at Little Brown Jug. What a great year we had with Winnipeg's favorite local beer on board with us, and looking forward to many more. Ice cold 1919s in 2023. And maybe no better time than this afternoon, 5:30, Canada, USA, in the middle of the week. Why the heck not? Always pop by on your way home from work, your local beer store, or the brewery and tap room downtown and grab it. Or you can always order online at littlebrownjug.ca. All right, we got to get to the Coolbet lines for our friends over at Coolbet, but let's get Remis back in here. And Remo, man, lots of interesting Jets conversation today in the midst of a 3-game winning streak. Tell you what, it sure would have taken this scenario when we dropped the puck on the season to be beginning 2023, talking about a club challenging for first place and all the great stories that we've gone through over this afternoon with Scott and Mike.
Yeah, it is funny because after that 3-game losing streak, I was like, maybe the season wasn't meant to be. You know, you're running all these injuries. You're on a 3-game losing streak. You got some tough games, but no, they've persevered like they have all season. Just ripped off the 4th 3-game winning streak of the year. And again, some tough decisions. What do you do with the defense when Schmidt comes back? Who comes out? Is it Heinola or
what do you think?
Sandberg?
Where's your hot take?
Yeah, I think Billy's been great, but I think look. I think Schmidt came out, Billy went in. I think Schmidt would go back in. I think they play similar roles on the team, and maybe someone suggested in the chat giving Pionk a breather for and then put in Heinola, but I don't know. I agree that he fits, but they have so many. There's only so many spots, Hustlers. So I think they're all capable. So I would probably put Schmidt in and take out Billy, but I don't know what else you're supposed to do.
Take out Sandberg?
You could take out Sandberg. You could do that, but I think they like his size. So,
well, and again, I mean, we're talking about the PK. Billy's in on the power play. That's a Nate Schmidt spot as well. I think Billy Heinola plays on Friday. I'll just say that. I would be surprised if they take him out on Friday, and maybe that does mean Dylan Sandberg spends a night in the press box. And again, I'm really not sure about what the future for Kyle Capobianco is, because I sort of have thought of him as an insurance policy of some of the more offensive and skating defensemen that the Winnipeg Jets had. And that was, I think they were somewhat unsure as to what Billy Heinola was going to be under Rick Bowness and how that would work. It's working pretty good, and it's looking pretty good right now. Needless to say, we'll tackle more of this in the upcoming couple of shows heading into Friday's Big Tilt with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Listen, we got to make a few predictions for the skills competition before we're done. But before we do that, take a look at the Coolbet lines for today. Canada, USA, 5:30 gang. Canada minus 221 to win on the money line. USA plus 175. And Canada on the puck line to win by 2 plus 119. Total of 7. Over is plus 112. Under is minus 142. As far as the NHL goes tonight, only 3 games. Andrew Kopp and the Red Wings host the New Jersey Devils. 2 actually really good stories so far this season. Devils minus 159 favorites. Wings plus 134. The Tampa Bay Lightning starting their journey, coming to Winnipeg. First up, as often happens, a trip to Minnesota to take on the Wild. The Wild, a slight favorite at minus 114. Tampa at minus 103. And the Dallas Stars finish it off tonight on the West Coast in Anaheim to take on the Ducks. Ducks at plus 180 and the Dallas Stars at minus 215. Bunch of NFL lines are up right now, although the lines that we don't see right now involve both the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals. And I know we spent a lot of time talking about DeMar yesterday, the injured safety from the Buffalo Bills. We can tell you that there has been some positive news coming out of the University of Cincinnati Hospital. A family spokesperson said, and I can't really get too much into it because they didn't give too many details, but they said what the doctors were hoping to see overnight happened, and there is more and more optimism that DeMar Hiller may be able to make a recovery, but still the entire football and sporting world hoping and thinking about him to make a recovery. And the National Football League is in an incredible bind right now, trying to figure out how to handle this moving forward and what makes sense for the Bills and the Bengals. What is unfortunate for both of those teams is that this game will likely not be played. Both the Bills and the Bengals will have one less game played this year and will be slotted in the playoffs based on their winning percentage. And that's a huge plus for the Kansas City Chiefs, who will need to beat the Raiders. And if that is the case, if they do beat the Raiders on the weekend, will get the very coveted bye and home field throughout the playoffs. I did see Mike Florio suggest today at Pro Football Talk that in the interest of fairness, if the AFC Championship game is, for instance, between the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs, maybe that game be played at a neutral site. I mean, the Chiefs will get the bye if they end up being first on account of it. But it's just an unprecedented situation with losing a game in the fashion that they did and what that does to the playoffs. But I'm sure we'll get some more clarity on that a little later on in the week, as well as what's to come for the Bills and the Bengals this weekend after hopefully hearing some more good news about the player who was, injured in that very, very scary event over on Monday night, which led to the postponement and eventual cancellation of the Monday Night Football game. But the rest of the lines are there. Dusty's back. We'll have a big lock shop heading into Week 18 of the NFL season coming up on Friday. For you YouTubers out there, make sure to check out Lock Shop and get a sub there and throw your notifications on so you know when we are going live. And again, if you haven't played a cool bet before, use the promo code WST on your first deposit for a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. All right, Remo, before we go, let's talk about the skills competition tonight. Always a fun event. I'm actually, you know me, I was a huge fan of the Speed of Light promo last year where Jet would take on all comers and finish the season undefeated. Jet's back tonight and we'll be going head-to-head with Bar Down's Jesse Pollock in a skating race, assuming Jesse gets here on time with his equipment after starting the day in Halifax, going to Toronto to get his gear, and then ending up in the Peg.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious how the travel is going to affect him. I know Jet's pretty good.
Couple time zones.
That is
couple time zones there.
There are a couple time zones. So I think Jets, he's done these before. I do think there's an advantage. I know Jesse's a pretty good player. He posts about his high school hockey accolades here.
Big beer league guy.
Yeah, he rocks number 69, so you know he must be good to own it. So I still am going to go Jet just because I know Jesse's going to be upset that I pick against him, but I think he's done it before. And the mindset of being in a race, I think there's some advantage there. He's got home ice advantage.
I'll say this. I mean, we've talked before about the game production this year and just the continued improvements the Jets have made as an organization in a lot of areas. And listen, if you're not going to games, you probably haven't seen it. Those of us that are, I think, would agree. They absolutely nailed last night at the game, Remo. Of the in-game promotions, like during timeouts, the Hoser Cam was absolutely phenomenal. And we saw one guy, I don't think this has ever happened before, one guy make an appearance on both the Hoser Cam and an epic mustache cam later on in the third period. And I'm not sure whether it's Janice or who the folks behind the scenes are part of that team with selecting the celebrity lookalikes at the games. I'm consistently blown away of the lookalikes that they find and how they get the pictures and get that set up. But it was another all-timer last night with Danny Trujillo, the third lookalike last night. So anyways, kudos to Balls and the gang for making those games fun in between periods. But I have missed the Speed of Light in between intermissions so far this season. And Jet will be back tonight for the Jet skills competition. But let's make some predictions, Remo. We've got hardest shot, fastest skater, and shooting accuracy drills. Now, I get the one thing that's difficult to know. Like, will the returning players be in this tonight? Like, will Cole Perfetti be a part of it? Will Nate Schmidt be involved?
Yeah.
I would probably think no. But I'll tell you what, I think Perfetti might be a sneaky pick for that shooting accuracy contest if he does participate.
I wish the Jets would have put out the who's competing. Maybe they don't even know, but who's competing, so we could make some betting lines for these. Yes, like we needed something to talk. I want to know fastest skater, Kyle Connor or
Connor's like minus 200.
Yeah, Axel I think is a dark horse for that accuracy.
Good call.
What, Josh Morrissey, or who are you thinking?
JMO in the shooting accuracy. Yeah. I like that call. Like that call.
Okay, hardest shot. I'll try to rip. Well, how about Brendan Dillon? Just because he's a bigger guy. I'm trying to think like who's the heaviest guy. Or Dubois, hardest shot maybe.
You know what? I think a lot of times you see the hardest shot. What about Stenny? He's got a
Yeah.
big stick. He might be able to rip. I hope Stenlund takes part in that. And the one guy that I think I would maybe give my support as a bit of an underdog, but a guy that might be able to do really well in the hardest shot if he participates, is Nate Schmidt. Nate Schmidt for certainly is going to have to be there. He's going to need to be mic'd up or something, because the entertainment value of Schmidt in an event like this would be 5-star, even if he's not able to participate. Yeah. Give us your thoughts in the chat, everyone. Who you got? Fastest skater, hardest shot, accuracy.
I see Pionk getting love for hardest shot. Axel and KFC, fastest skater. Sam Gagne, some love for accuracy, which I would agree with. I don't know, like, what breakaway challenge.
Earl James, Heinola will win them all.
Heinola will win. Heinola wins every competition. Doug Phil says Stanley hardest shot. I don't know if Stanley's going to be in the competing.
No, there's no way.
There's
no way he'll be.
So I was going to say him just because he's so big and you can get a lot of
6'7", you know.
He is 6'7", but I think Stenny, he's pretty big too. I think was he 6'5"?
He's 6'4" or 6'5".
He's listed at 6'4". So, I think I'll maybe we should write down our picks and see who's correct.
Can Axel win the fastest skater? He's got to be in it. This might be his moment of the entire season. I think Kyle Connor, we know how fast he is. I'm not sure that he'll maybe care as much as a guy like Axel, and man, this opportunity to let his flow go. I mean, Axel Johnson Fjallby is made for this event tonight, the skills competition.
You can get a lot of good pictures with that. So I think what's going to happen is someone's going to throw a water bottle at Kyle Connor while he's going. They usually do that and let Axel win. So yeah, let's go with Axel. But accuracy, who are we going to accuracy?
I'm going to go Kyle Connor for accuracy.
Okay. How about I'll go with
Axel wins the skating, Kyle Connor. And again, we don't even know if everyone's participating in what. So
we don't know who's participating in what.
So we're ballparking these picks.
Morrissey or what? We haven't even said Scheifele for accuracy. We forgot about him, the guy who's leading the team with goals.
I mean, listen, it's no knock on Mark Scheifele. I would take Kyle Connor.
Scheifele
would be a close one. I would love to see. Hopefully, both of those guys are in it, and they basically go head to head, because those are the guys that have got it done. Dubois might be a player. I mean, the accuracy is a good one. I mean, there's no chance of getting hurt or anything. I mean, all I can think of when at this skills competition is the story Trevor Kidd told us earlier. Okay. For crying out loud, bubble wrap these guys. Just let's make sure that everyone has a great time tonight. It's fun for the fans. Everyone makes it out unscathed and ready for the Tampa Bay Lightning on Friday.
Trevor Kidd, he told a story on the show a couple of weeks ago that he was having a career year with Florida and did the splits on, was it Peter Worrell, who did a breakaway move and was injured.
Tore his shoulder.
And so I was watching Trevor on with Sarah yesterday. And he's like, well, Hellbuck, he's not doing anything at this. I can tell you that. Hellbuck, he's not participating in anything. Put him in bubble wrap.
Yeah, now, I guess, what are they going to do? They've got to draft AAA midget goaltenders
Yeah, they usually get some other, dummy goalies to come in and just get lit up.
Don't call them dummies. Sorry. They're younger players
getting
an opportunity.
Like crash test dummies. That you can't call it a crash test dummy anymore. It's offensive.
No, you're canceled. You're canceled.
Goalies. Oh God! So I will have to put our picks in. I guess if you're watching this after, put your predictions. But we don't know who it's gonna be, which is the worst part. We gotta create some content.
Axel for fastest skater.
Yeah.
Connor for accuracy. Hardest shot is an interesting one. Well, you know what? I'm gonna go off the board. I'm captain of the Stenny stands. I think Kevin Stenlund shocks everyone with the hardest shot based on absolutely nothing other than he's had a few good shots so far this year. He's big. If he kind of leans into one, uses the physics of his big body, should have an opportunity to do it. So that's my off-the-board underdog pick for hardest shot, Kevin Stenlund.
I was going to pick Stenny. Well, no one mentioned Scheifele, so I think Scheifele's accuracy, I like Gagne too. I like Gagne, and I think Morrissey could go. Morrissey for hardest shot, or Pionk, people said. Lowry, we haven't mentioned. He's a big dude, or Dubois. I mean, I don't know who's participating in what.
Nicole J with a great idea in chat. They should have a jet dog eating contest tonight. Like in between a few of the events, they should get like half a dozen fans, all with a jet dog, and whoever can take it down first. That would be. See, you know what? That we should have contacted them earlier and tried to get involved in the skills competition. I mean, hey, we did start the incredible pierogi eating contest at Folklorama. Why not an annual jet dog eating contest at the skills competition? It is a skill of many fans being able to delete a jet dog in record time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff on that. We'd have to see. I'm curious, but you know, it's going to be a great event. Again, they take out the glass. I don't know if they sign autographs, interact with the fans. Seems like everyone's having a good time. Yeah, no practice today because of the morning today. Because of the skills. I wonder how that affects the routine. With this game coming up Friday.
Well, hopefully the boys got to go out last night, maybe tilt a couple and sleep in today, get ready for a fun team activity, and then get ready for a big practice tomorrow and a huge game on Friday as they look to make it 4 in a row against one of the measuring stick teams in the National Hockey League, of course, the Tampa Bay Lightning. So we'll be here for it. But I know before that, we got a Canada-USA game coming up at 5:30 today. What do you have a call on that one, Remo?
Yeah, I'm picking
staring at these Coolbet lines right now. Canada by 2?
Yeah.
Plus 119?
By 10. Yeah. Come on.
By 10.
I'm not taking.
They beat Slovakia in OT.
Yeah.
Although, great point by Scott. The Slovaks did beat the United States. Like, that was a good team that Canada played.
Well, yeah, I would still take Canada, but I'm not. You think I'm going to sit here and say, yeah, I'm going to bet on Team USA over Team Canada? I saw Coolbet Chris did, or he's just now real Chris Abbott. He bet on them.
Oh, he bet on the States?
Yeah, I think he tweeted that he did. So,
well, the States are plus 175. That being said, that's no fun. But that's also, I'm not laying minus 221.
No.
So we're right in the puck line here. Canada by 2. At plus 119. It's locked in at Coolbet. I also have to think about a pick of the day. I think I might hit this Raptors game tonight. Giannis and a bunch of other guys playing. Many of the top Bucks aren't there. I was kind of surprised to see the Raptors were 4.5-point favorites against Milwaukee, but they are. I guess this is an ESPN game in the States, so I'm sure Toronto will be ready to go, and Nick Nurse always has a good plan for Giannis. So, great sports night tonight. Enjoy the skills competition if you're heading to it. Enjoy Canada-USA coming up later on this evening, and we will be all over it tomorrow with the latest on the Jets at practice tomorrow, skills competition results, and, of course, getting ready for what will be the championship game in the World Junior Hockey Championship, hopefully involving Connor Bedard and our Canadian team. Thanks to everyone that joined us today.
No, I want to get in one more thing. Sorry, one more thing. I do have to mention this. First of all, we didn't mention, USA does have Rutger and Chaz Lucius. I did want to get to this, Hustler. I put it at the end. So we're watching the game on TV, and I do want to give a PSA for anyone. If you were watching the game last night and your TV was flickering during the game, that wasn't.
Oh, yes.
I needed to get this in. Sorry to cut you off. I have to get this in. If you were watching the game and your TV was flickering, it wasn't an issue with your cable box. It wasn't an issue with your TV. It was, in fact, an issue with the Jets TSN 3 broadcast. And I jokingly said, well, this obviously has to do something with the digital board ads because we know how great they are and how much we love them. And then I noticed in the third period, they turned off the digital board ads and the flickering stopped. So just another example of the board ads working extraordinarily well, as Gary Bettman said. So I just wanted to give a PSA. You don't have to replace your TV. It was a problem with the broadcast. I had to get I've
got a great hack for people like you and others that spend a lot of time online complaining about the boards. Get off your ass and buy a ticket and go to the games. There's no digital board ads if you show up at the arena.
And that's why I'm so pumped with the junior game tonight, Huss, because I don't have to be shown all these digital ads during the game. I'm looking forward to getting to more games. I am at home on the couch with a newborn, so my time isn't what I used to be, but I fully agree with you.
Go on at MRemis on Twitter, and you can check out the detective work that Michael spent putting into getting to the bottom of what the heck was going on with the broadcast last night. I'll be honest, it was also affecting it in the building. There was a couple times I was having a conversation with a friend in between the first and second period, and was walking out, and obviously they stopped the play, so I had to go in at the first whistle, and it cut out a number of times into just a blank screen on the TVs inside. So it was screwing up a lot of things right now, and I know that is a topic that continues to get run amongst hockey fans. It is a bit of a joke that this is still happening, but as I say, some triggered more than others. But it's not positive for the National Hockey League. I think we can all agree. That being said, if you're sitting in the seats at the rink, no such problems. And tell you what, 14 home wins on the season. It's been a pretty fun season to be attending games for the Winnipeg Jets. And hopefully we'll get a great crowd on Friday night when the Tampa Bay Lightning come to town. Folks, enjoy the game tonight and the skills competition. Huge thanks to all the sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. And our guest today, Stephen Ellis from Daily Faceoff, and of course, Scott Billeck from the Sun and Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. Book it. We'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully talking about Canada, the World Junior Hockey Championship final, live at 1 o'clock on YouTube, and then your podcast a little bit later on. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.